You're listening to the Zetetic.news Cast on the Zetetic News Network with your hosts, Dave and Xavier Diamant. Proceed by inquiry.
All right, welcome to episode 25 of the Zetetic.news Cast. We're your hosts, Dave and Xavier Diamant. And it is Thursday, August 26, 2021. And today's episode we're joined by two very special guests, both former prior guests on the show, James Iredell and EricB. And we're going to have a very wide-ranging discussion today. Man, I wanted to play a little music here just to sort of set the tone, because epic times. We've been talking a lot before we started streaming, and it just seems like climactic where we're at. And this is episode 25. It could very well be the last episode that we stream on the Zetetic News Network YouTube, because we are on our third strike. And I was confirming that we can actually stream for this episode, and we can, but if we get one more strike, permanent removal of the channel. So, I have not said any of the words that are not to be said in the tags and the headline and the image, but you never know what words they are these days, and I think we're being listened to by some very agenda-driven individuals, so we'll see what happens. Hopefully, this music that I'm hoping to play here in a second will not result in that activity. But today's episode, we're going to first talk about the word of the day for Thesaurus Thursday, and that word is delta. And then we're going to jump into the core topic, which you can read in the description, that being the true nature and character of so-called extraterrestrials, or beings that are, so-call it, like out of this world. But before we jump into that, let me just play some music here.
Grammarly helps make your writing clear and concise, no matter where you are. Compose a cover.
And I think apropos it's taken from this movie Interstellar, which is a key sort of Hollywood production, very fitting of the topic du jour of today's episode, and that is the subject of space and space cosmologies, the Earth, who we are, where we come from, why we're here, where we're going, who's been here before. And it's an apropos subject. I think it was talked about on our January 2020 episode, the subject of UFOs, disclosure, the space program, aliens, the military, SpaceX, Blue Origins. And sure enough, 2021, we've got Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, who knows, maybe Steve Jobs will come back from the dead as a AI Apple application that travels into space with Elon Musk and a Bitcoin and a Dogecoin, and it is exchanged in the first intergalactic transaction using the solar system World Wide Web. And I wanted to play this music because it just felt like right for where we're at as a society, and the topic, of course, extraterrestrials, the Hollywood sort of movie magic system, all of that stuff. But before we do that, I want to focus back on the word of the day, and that is delta. And actually, I think it's just all fits right together like a puzzle. Mm-hmm. So delta is coming up right because of the Delta variant. And that's the current sort of iteration of the COVID hoax that's being, foisted on us. Mm-hmm. It's why we need to re-lock down. It's why we need to take this second or third vaccination. Can't believe we're already on 3. Oh wait, yes I can. We talked about it before, right? It's going to be an endless supply of vaccinations and compliance and installation of tracking systems, etc. But Delta, they always have some sort of logic behind the language, the linguistics. COVID, certificate of vaccination ID. I mean, whether it was intended that way or not, man, it certainly fits together, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So Delta, it's the 4th letter of the Greek alphabet, equivalent to D, shaped like a triangle, and the name is from the Phoenician daleth, or tent door. It's also, discussed in the context of this open river, when 2 rivers come together. That's where a lot of civilization has supposedly developed on the planet and all of that stuff. But I just find it interesting. Delta's symbol is it's a triangle. And we see triangles, used in all sorts of iconography, symbology. It's on our dollar bill. Mm-hmm. That's what I've talked about this before. It kind of woke me up to the money system, the central bankers, the private families who control national governments, the throne behind the throne, and all of that. And triangles are everywhere, from Freemasonry to Hollywood R&B stars, flashing this. So the other thing that I probably my favorite meme on this subject is a depiction of the different brainwave states. Mm-hmm. And of course, one of our word of the days, Thesaurus Thursday, was theta previously, about, what is the theta network? What is this sort of AI grid all about, with video streaming, 3D virtual reality, all this stuff. They're trying to get into your brain. And Delta to me is just it's a brother sister to Theta. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like they're saying, and this is just my my feeling on the matter, right? It's almost like they know that if it's 50%, if it's 40%, if it's 20% of the population who has taken their tracker graphene oxide, depop bioweapon injection, Trump-jection, and then maybe it's like they already know that everybody's kind of in a delta state of mind, which is the lowest sort of brainwave state. You're basically asleep when you're in a delta state. And it's like, if you believe the Delta variant, you've got to be asleep. So look into Delta and look into the etymology and the symbols and the PR behind all this. That's kind of like my thought on the word of the day. Xavier, what do you think about Delta and the Delta variant and the Delta word of the day?
Yeah, those are excellent jumping off points. The triangle the Delta represents is also the rudimentary two-dimensional form of the pyramid, and the pyramid, as we see not only in the back of our bill, but inexplicably constructed on all continents with techniques and methods that we can't replicate, as being a symbol of the organization of power. throughout society. And you have the top rung at the pinnacle, and the great masses supporting everything at the bottom, where everything is flatlined, and nothing really changes and at the base. But at the top, you climb to the utmost heights, and see the seven kingdoms. And delta also in economics means rate of change over time. So look at the delta for the large biofirms, and how that's changed over time, quite to their advantage, year over year for the past year and change now. I think you're looking at several 100% growth in some of those stocks.
Yeah.
Very interesting that coincides with the ongoing force majeure, the ongoing propaganda coercion to submit. And what better symbol to present to everyone?
Right.
So I think that and it's very interesting because there's all this talk of this possible other, this lambda, right?
Lambda, right?
Right. And then what's the difference in the alphabetical configuration in the Phoenician alphabet between delta and lambda? Delta's still got the base, right? There's still a base upholding things. In the lambda, there's no base.
It's almost like a hook
Right.
at the top, kind of like the IRS symbol.
Yes. So is delta but one stop on the way to the lambda hook and the inversion of and the falling out of the base, so to speak, which seems to be happening with the broader narrative. There seems to be the need to appeal to the base as much as possible, but what happens if that base falls out? Where are we then?
James, what are your thoughts on word of the day, Delta, and the Delta variant, and the threat we face? What is the threat?
With Delta, I didn't think about it a lot. I just, when I heard it, I said they're just going to go through the Greek alphabet for for variants every time they want someone to take another clot shot. I remember Delta Force, that was part of the military. I think initially they said the U.S. government wouldn't admit Delta Force existed, and then some stuff was posted online tying it to 5G, saying that one of the companies that was making the 5G towers was Delta. I don't know if that was true. I didn't chase it down. Very interesting connection, as you mentioned.
Graphene oxide.
Graphene oxide.
What about you, EricB? Delta? What comes to mind?
To me, it's the capstone. It's the introduction of the culmination of their Masonic work. It's also, as you see here with the dream state, it's the dreamless state, loss of bodily awareness. They have done it. They have gotten their zombie apocalypse. They're stormtroopers. They have completed the capstone.
That's very true, and hoping to pull up a couple posts on the ZNN Telegram. If you're not on the ZNN Telegram, you definitely should be. With only 20 members, the content is just out of this world. But you mentioned the zombification. I think I posted a tweet in here. Yeah, right here. People ask me,
Hey, children.
Dave, why do you want to homeschool your kids? And if I can pull it up here. Daggone it. Twitter's harder and harder to access these days. If you don't have your password, you really can't watch or like look at stuff publicly anymore.
Yeah, you're going to have a biometric scan to make sure you don't have any variant to even access the internet.
Oh man,
The digital ID.
wow.
Internet's going to be extinct for anybody who's not captured into this Delta programming.
That is truly
Here it is.
Lovecraftian.
Here
They
it is.
have them.
Yeah.
They have the children.
So, yeah, hopefully y'all can see now if you're just listening on a podcast platform. There is a video component to this. You can check us out at Zetetic.news, also theta.tv/Zetetic News Network 10. And I'm showing a Twitter post from Jack Posobiec showing these children in their public school, doing the zombie walk to keep them safe as they go to the cafeteria. This doesn't even conform to their own rules around 6 foot distance, because these kids' arms are like, 24 inches at best. So, but also, The Walking Dead, Resident Evil, and I don't know if y'all played Resident Evil, but like the Wuhan Lab logo is the same as the Umbrella Corporation from Resident Evil, which basically,
That's right.
just look into it, okay? But zombies, like, why have zombies been culturally, it's obvious. It's obvious why the zombie culture, the, Walking Dead scenario has been so popular in Hollywood movies. But, this was particularly disgusting, to your point, and Eric,
Child abuse.
yeah, but also Delta variant. We got to implement these measures because we got a rise in cases, right?
Worship the chart.
Yeah, exactly.
Fear the chart.
So let's transition away from word of the day, Delta, and move on to sort of the soup du jour of episode 25, and that is the true nature and character of ETs and extraterrestrials. This is obviously a very compelling and controversial subject. It's one that I've been interested in for as long as I can remember. It's one that has received more mainstream attention from like establishment news organizations in the last 2 years than in the last probably 30 years. It's something that we've discussed multiple times on the show. We'll be uploading more and more clips on Zetetic News Clips YouTube as long as we're allowed to, which highlight some of our past discussions about the secret space program, extraterrestrials, space cosmology, and all of that. So we're not going to like revisit that sort of like background that we've already covered. We'd sort of like to jump right into the discussion because I think it was episode 23. It was the Big Dog episode 22. After we talked with Big Dog, we transitioned into a interview with Stephen Greer, who heads up the Disclosure Project, and he appeared on the Alex Jones show. And I've followed Stephen Greer for years myself. I've also spoken with some of the members of his organization's board because I interviewed somebody that they thought were a credible source for their efforts on the quote-unquote Disclosure Project. And it's just been a very interesting sort of personal journey, talking, thinking, discussing ET's space program and NASA and space. I mean, I'm not a space geek, but who doesn't like think about this. I mean, that's like a very philosophical pursuit. Is what is that up there? Where, you know, like I said in the intro, what are we doing here? Who are we? Et cetera, et cetera. So, anyways, we covered that subject, and we've had various postings on the Zetetic News Sleuth Telegram, and our former guest, James Iredell, who's kind enough to join us, had made some postings about, you know, well, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, James, but, you know, you have a strong opinion about Stephen Greer, the information that he's sharing on Alex Jones. Of course, Alex Jones, and so do I, and so does Xavier. And I thought it would be a really good topic of discussion. And so I'm just so pumped to have EricB and James here in the house, and Xavier, of course, in the studio as well, to have that open discussion. And I won't restate any of the things that like I've talked about or you've talked about. I think, James, you wanted to spend some time talking through your point of view about what ETs are, from your perspective, from a biblical perspective. You've got a couple clips you want to play. I've got them sort of queued up. I also have your Word document outlined. Do you want me to pull that up?
Yeah, if you want to, that'd
Okay.
be great. I'll cruise through this. This will sound like a new territory for ZNN. It'll almost be a Bible study to get to the ET part.
All right.
But
Cool.
how do I view this from the Bible? You start in the beginning. You start in Genesis. Genesis starts in the beginning. God doesn't explain where God was. It just says he was always there. If someone misinterprets that first 3 chapters of the Bible, the rest of the Bible will invariably be misinterpreted. In those first 3 chapters, we have the fact that God created the universe out of nothing. It's called ex nihilo. A lot of the reformers used Latin terms, kind of like hung over from the influence of the Roman Catholic Church. They had the Latin Vulgate, so they still like their Latin, ex nihilo, out of nothing. The ultimate creation of God was man. The earth was created for man. Man was not created for the earth. That's key. The New World Order and popular culture invert the design by placing the earth above man. If you're familiar, this happens near constantly, but if you're familiar even with the latest Avengers movies, Infinity Wars and Endgame, they have Thanos as a supervillain, but he was supposedly good because he wanted to destroy half the population of the universe because of lack of resources. And even in their propaganda, is completely gay, because if he had godlike powers, why not just double or triple the resources of the universe? No, he's going to have to kill half the universe. But we see this in the Matrix. People were called a virus in the Matrix. You're just destroying resources. Or we see this played out in the political realm. And of course, the propaganda always has political purpose. Anthropogenic or man-made global warming. Oh no, we have to reduce the population of the world to save the earth. No. God created the earth for man, not the other way around. All that God created was good, and man was the pinnacle of the height of God's creation. In chapter 1, verse 26, and God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness. Let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply." Having children was God's design. It's not disgusting. It's not something that's wrong. You look at China, the one-child policy. They've done it in the West, first through eugenics, first through sterilizing people, then through making abortion legal. This is an inversion of God's purpose for man. Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Sin corrupted man and all of creation. Listening to this may be very familiar. I believe this was the literal truth. Then the Lord took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to tend and keep it. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, "Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die." Genesis 2:15-17. Now the serpent, interesting, the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, Has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, you shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it, lest you die. Then the serpent said to the woman, you will not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desirable to make one wise, she took of the fruit and ate. She also gave to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they knew that they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves coverings. The simple explanation for this is that Satan was a liar from the beginning, and he said, for God knows in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. No. That was a distortion. They became like Satan, knowing good and evil, because they sinned. They didn't remain holy. After they sinned, they were changed, and the whole creation was changed. Romans and the New Testament really goes into detail on that. For the creation was subject to futility, not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope. Because the creation itself also would be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and labors with birth pangs together until now. So when man sinned, all of creation, which was designed for man, then that also became corrupted. Then we have the promise of salvation or deliverance from that penalty of sin for man. How can God then redeem man? This is known, Genesis 3:15, as a proto-evangelium. Again, the Protestant reformers like their Latin, just meaning the first gospel. The verse introduces two elements previously unknown in the Garden of Eden, elements that are the basis of Christianity. The curse on mankind because of Adam's unbelief and God's provision of a Savior from sin who would take the curse upon himself. Chapter 3, verse 15 in Genesis, now will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. So we see here a woman would have seed, which doesn't happen. That was a prediction. That was a prophecy of the virgin conception of the Lord Jesus, and talks about the fact that the Lord Jesus would bruise, his head would be bruised. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Okay, so the bruise that the Lord Jesus would do, as far as the head of the serpent, that would be mortal, and then with his heel, that would be a lesser wound. Jesus said to them in John chapter 6, verse 42-45, God were your Father, you would love me, for I proceeded forth and came from God, nor have I come of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not understand my speech? Because you are not able to listen to my word. You are of your father, the devil, and the desires of your father you want to do. He was a murderer from the beginning and does not stand in the truth, because there's no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaks from his own resources, for he is a lie and the father of. But because I tell you the truth, you do not believe me. There we see a clear example where Christ is talking to Pharisees that were saying he was false, and he's saying you're of your father, the devil. But could there possibly be a greater meaning there? Spiritually, what was going on? What's this idea as far as the seed of then the serpent? What was that? But ultimately, the most important thing I have to say is the gospel is who Christ is. Therefore, having been justified or declared righteous by faith, we have peace with God through our Lord Jesus Christ. When an individual understands they're a sinner, they trust Christ, and exchange takes place. God accounts you with the righteousness of Christ. He was sinless. He couldn't sin. That exchange only takes place because God graciously provided a Savior, and that happens through faith. Very clear in Romans 10:9-11 that if you confess to your mouth the Lord Jesus and believe in your heart that God has raised him from the dead, you will be saved. Saved from what? Saved from the penalty of your sin. For with the heart one believes unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. Salvation means deliverance. Deliverance from what? The penalty of sin. For the scripture says, whoever believes on him will not be put to shame. I could leave now, that's the most important thing, but I'm here to talk still to tie this to aliens. Demonic plan to corrupt the human race. Very interesting verses. Tons have been written about Genesis 6:1-4. Now it came to pass when man began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he indeed is flesh, yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown.
Can we stop here for
absolutely.
a minute?
Go right ahead. Absolutely.
You said a lot already.
Absolutely.
But I just want to focus on this one real quick.
Sure.
And the Lord said, "My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years." There were, what does this bracketed B mean? What does that mean?
Sorry, I didn't clean those up. That's just when I used an online program called Bible Gateway.
Okay.
It just has it gives you some
Okay.
notes about cross references. The 120 years is normally interpreted as this is until the flood would come, and then God said enough's enough based upon the sons of man coming into the doors of woman. So 120 years then until the flood came.
My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh. Yet his days shall be 120 years. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown.
Yeah, I take the position again. I don't want to say something I can't be proved biblically. There's two basic translations. I'll give you the one I think is incorrect. Some people look at that. People like Matthew Henry, good conservative commentary, still in print from hundreds of years, and he'll say, "Well, the sons of God was the God's line of Seth." Don't think so. I don't think so. I think it's talking about the fact that somehow demons impregnated woman. Now, demons were spiritual beings, so some people would say, how could that happen? I don't know, but that's what the text says. This idea, the giants there, people talk about the Nephilim. It doesn't necessarily mean that they were giant, though I think some were talking about that they were more renowned, they were more powerful. You see this breaking out in corrupted in like Greek mythology. The Titan, someone like Hercules, was half god, half man.
Mm-hmm.
And this is in tons
I
of
know,
stuff.
right?
It's all over the place, and I think this is a corruption of what you see here in Genesis.
Okay, so from a Bible study, biblical perspective, I am basically an idiot. I haven't read the Bible. I've read some of it, through this and that, but not page front to back. I was an altar boy for the Catholic Church, so I have some, experience with the dogma. But like I said, I'm not a Bible study. So I'm very just sort of I'm not agnostic. Sure. But in a sense I am, in that I don't have sort of a strong dog in the fight as to what we call, quote, ETs. Mm-hmm. I can use many different names. I don't disbelieve in demons. Definitely think that there's something that I would describe as a demon. But I'm very interested so far, what Xavier and Eric think about this. What is this all about with giants coming into men of flesh who are already here, I guess, or coexisting with these giants? And then there's also this spiritual element, God, of course, being part of that, but also demons. Are they giants? Are they the same thing? Is it an energetic thing that's non-physical? Whereas with giants, we have huge skeletons in multiple archaeological discoveries. We have all sorts of physical footprints of giant type structures that don't make any sense for humans as they exist today. I'll start with you, Xavier. What's your I know that you have a little bit of background with the church.
Yes.
So and I think you've read probably a little bit more of the Bible than I have.
Religious studies and being a preacher's kid, I definitely have some familiarity with the word. And I think I sort of see each so-called book in the Bible as actually a library, kind of a consortium of a lot of different influences and a lot of different input from a lot of different cultures and a lot of different civilizations. So, by giants, we kind of have this bias in contemporary thinking about the form of man, as we've always been kind of the same sized meat sack. Where we've always been kind of the same, hands and arms and our dimensions are essentially identical throughout time. And I believe that this is actually an incorrect premise. I believe the form of man has very much changed from epoch to epoch, and that has been through a sort of hylomorphic intent or some sort of creative influence upon us as beings. So in some ways you could say that man is a spiritual construct in the first place. So when we look at our present form, we like to project it into the past and say that this is the only basis by which we can comprehend the reality of our being is through some sort of physical continuity. And it makes a lot of sense for historical purposes why you'd want to have that sort of continuity. But the issue is, as we've detailed in prior episodes, the historicity of that continuity is harder and harder to confirm the longer you look back in time. And that these sacred texts are very much messages from perhaps former epochs where we, in our very nature, could have been very different conscious, spiritual, physical entities. And so in that sense, we ourselves have changed according to the Spirit over time. And we may be in a very much miniaturized version compared to previous eras of the creation, you might say. And in prior eras, perhaps there were tie-overs from previous eras or epochs of other beings who were still around or maybe had survived some massive cataclysm.
Men of renown.
Men of renown. So these could be entities who may have taken on a very different form. Maybe they were much larger. Maybe they lived for much longer. Perhaps they were more intelligent. Perhaps they were more resourceful. Perhaps they could actually garner forces and energies from nature and the creation that we're not privy to. So I think that
superpowers, in other words.
Well, or elevated capacities,
relative to the other beings.
Absolutely, and perhaps they had a certain sort of ability to tap into a primordial divine spark, you might say.
Eric, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I think look at quantum mechanics and our ability to affect that field just mentally. It's limited, but we can do it just by being in the presence of the field. I think we have lost the ability to manifest in that way. We've lost a lot of our consciousness.
Mm-hmm. And so the giants may just be this amalgamation or this terminological construct for beings that we don't really fully comprehend or understand. And that those beings have an impact and have an influence on our being in whatever era we may posit or we may interpret or interact with the text in this way. I think that the Bible is very much a sort of ever-living manual or a gateway to truths or aspects of history that we only have the faintest intuitions about, and that each new generation has a new lesson or a new path to these insights. but it involves the individual creating
engaging with
exactly
James. What you want to continue?
Yeah,
on
yeah,
your
yeah, absolutely.
presentation?
I think it did talk about somehow some of the fallen angels or the demons did somehow cohabitate with women. They married them even, which is, there's mystery in the text. You figure more angels, why did they marry them? But they did. They procreated with them, and then it created these people, Nephilim. Some were definitely literally big, like you mentioned the bones. There's some evidence. Some were just renowned. But you think about, as far as what Xavier was saying, you go back to Adam. Methuselah lived, recorded in the Bible, 969 years. So I think there was amazing technology. It's not mentioned in Scripture that then was lost after the flood. And then some of it came back. But you get into this idea again of demons. We have New Testament commentary on the Old Testament to explain what had happened, what the judgment was then. One verse here, a few verses in Matthew. A lot of people pick up on this. There's one guy, a Christian on YouTube. I don't think he got banned yet. He may have called Days of Noah. A lot of people talk about that, Days of Noah, for this reason. But of that day and hour, no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only, the return of Christ. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. Now, at face value, that just may mean before Christ returns, it'll be like Noah. Noah had warned people for well over 100 years, and they ignored him, and then they got swept away in judgment. But there also may be another application to this, saying, there were Nephilim then. God was judging people because there had been this demonic procreation that had corrupted the human race, and that may be tied back to the prophecy in 3:15, as far as crushing. The Lord would crush the head of the serpent, but he would bruise his heel. That there may have been one of Satan's plans may have been before the flood to completely destroy and corrupt the human race, so the Messiah can never be born. It's possible. But how do we get to these Nephilim if they are around or will come back? How do we explain that after the flood? Very interesting in the New Testament. For if God did not spare the angels who sinned, but cast them down to hell and delivered them into chains of darkness to be reserved for judgment, and did not spare the ancient world, but saved Noah, one of 8 people, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood on the world to the ungodly, and turning the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah into ashes, condemned them to destruction, making them an example to those who afterward would live ungodly, and delivered righteous Lot, who was oppressed by the filthy conduct of the wicked. 2 Peter 2:4-7. So that seems to indicate pretty clearly a certain class of demons then don't have access to mess with people on the earth now. They're already in chains reserved for judgment. That seems to say that that was a judgment for those class of demons that then procreate with women and produce the hybrid people. Also in Jude 1:6-7, it seems to say that. And the angels who did not keep their proper domain, but left their own abode, he has reserved in everlasting chains under darkness for the judgment of the great day. As Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities around them, in a similar manner to these, having given themselves over to sexual immorality and gone after strange flesh, are set forth as an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. Now, that begs the question, though. If there was this demonic procreation in Genesis 6, everyone's wiped away except Noah and his family, how could it possibly happen again? And we get a clue in that. I won't read all the verses in Luke 8:26-23, but it is possible when Christ cast demons out of a man, the demons that were in the man made a statement to him, and they talked about they said, do not, and they begged him. This is Luke 8:31. They begged him that he would not command them to go into the abyss. The abyss appears to be a technical word for that place in hell where they wouldn't be able to affect anyone. So it's possible that what the scripture may be saying is that generation of demons that crossed that line and created the half-breeds were doomed, but then some demons are still bold enough after that to try it, and if it happens, then they still may do it, and they may get sent to the abyss. Again, I don't want to present speculation, but I used to laugh, for example, years ago when people would say, you'd have the videos of people's eyes changing, and we know what David Icke would say, and David Icke doesn't believe the Bible. But is there an element of truth as far as, I don't think, if there are shape-shifting reptilians, I don't think they're from other planets, but it is possible, I'm just saying, it is quite possible that there may be people out there that are half-breeds of demons and humans, and it could be the royal family. I'm just saying, it is possible they're around.
There are even popular TV shows about real world experiences, women being raped essentially by demons while they're sleeping.
Mm-hmm. Also, the popular cultural iconography around vampires.
Which, I mean, you look into the royal family, they're proud to associate with.
Right.
I mean, literally. But, I mean, if you believe in immaculate conception, it stands to reason that a demon could impregnate a flesh and blood human being. We've also covered, I don't know if you've watched this portion of our past episodes, but possession. Mm-hmm. I showed an abortion doctor, I'm air quotes, y'all can't see me, but air quotes. It's highlighted on our Instagram, Zetetic News Network, but somebody was, asking this guy to repent. He was standing outside of his clinic. Repent, you murderer, and killing all those babies and whatnot. And the dude got possessed and was like in his face, hissing like a snake.
I've seen that.
It makes my hair stand up, honestly.
Yeah.
But I look at that, and like I said, I don't like the term agnostic.
Right.
But as sort of an agnostic, from an agnostic perspective, I'm still looking at that like there is a possession there. There is an inhabitation of some sort of energetic spiritual force that I, can't really put into human words that is inhabiting that guy. And what's crazy about that guy in particular is, this video came out and within 1 year he was dead.
I didn't know that.
He died. His practice, he had a lawsuit against him for botching an abortion and almost killed this woman. And it was just a reputation of a nasty, nasty guy. And he ended up dying under sudden, unexpected, terms. And of course I don't think he was ever married or had kids, so just a good individual. But, possession to me, I don't need any more evidence than that to know that that's real. And so, we talk about COVID and spike proteins and RNA and genes and the human genome and CRISPR and mapping it all out. I mean,
luciferase.
You can't fucking map it out. Yeah. It's so complex, and energy and the spiritual realm has a direct influence on the physical. So you can't count that out at all. But as far as you say in your document here, how are aliens to be interpreted according to Scripture? Aliens are not ETs, but EDs. I assume you mean extra dimensional.
Yes.
I have no contention with that at all. As a matter of fact, one of our prior Thesaurus Thursdays, I think, was extraterrestrial, focusing on the blatant, in-your-face sort of
word magic.
Word magic of extraterrestrial, that, hey, they're actually telling you that it's just extra land.
Right.
It's not this off-world planetoid that you can blast off in a rocket ship to get to over a long period of time if you just have enough money.
And fuel.
Yeah, gasoline, right? But it's actually another dimension. And there are and then, the other thing, dimensions is kind of loses a lot of people.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Dimension is
the other way I look at it is like, you just look at the diversity of life that's already here.
Sure.
The whales, the octopi, the crustaceans, the anemones, the coral reefs, the rainforests, the thousand. I mean, the scientists don't know shit.
Yeah.
And
they don't.
And I think about like, okay, I'm gonna write a space movie, you know, and I'm gonna be like exploring this other dimension. There's really nothing more fantastical than what's already here.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the, you know, like a whale, a blue whale, or an elephant, or a hippopotamus. Those are monsters, like alien monsters. So, you know, I think there's just a lot to be said about, you know, what is, you know, like I see Tucker Carlson and Fox News, they're talking about UFOs and aliens, you know, after, you know, History Channel made it passe. The History Channel made it passe to talk about, you know, Giorgio Tsoukalos is a popular internet meme joke.
Right.
ETs, it's almost passe to talk about UFOs and aliens now.
Right.
But then it's like Tucker Carlson will be talking about, well, are UFOs real? And it's just like, just in the question, it's almost like a staged psyop of like definitionism and, you know, like trying to redefine when we have to at least establish what do you mean when you say alien? You say demons, I say EDs, ETs.
I'm just leaving to just parse a little bit. I'm just leaving it open between actual demons or spiritual creatures, and I'm leaving the door open. The fact that there could be these half breeds that are out there, and I say, you know, that so they're
they like the politicians?
They could well,
and the top of the Jesuit order.
Like I said, I don't want to. Dave Icke doesn't believe in the Bible. It's clear. He said he's Jesus. Hope he doesn't think that anymore. But the point is, there may be. I'm just throwing this out there. There may be an element of truth when he talks about shape-shifting reptilians. They're not from another galaxy, though.
Right, and they may not be so physical as to be comparable to a reptile, per se. And this is where, you know, dimensionalism becomes sort of vague. Like, you know, think about the relationship between a fish and an eagle, right? The fish has no purview of the existence of an eagle, but in one fell swoop, in an instant, the eagle takes it right out of its environment and eats it as food, right? So to what extent are us in our life, in our cosmology as humans, the fish to higher order eagle, by analogy, beings? So, in other words, our three-dimensional sort of purview of reality, or even if you want to include metaphysical concepts like time and all this as fourth, or, you know, whatever dimensions, even going into quantum mechanics, these are still like, imagine that as like the water of our consciousness.
That reminds me of two things.
You know?
That reminds me of two things. The first one is like in the Matrix, where they literally like step in a telephone booth and call into their lower self, essentially, you know, from their out of Matrix like being. And I think, you know, there's that sort of dynamic going on as well. The second thing, I actually lost my train of thought. Yeah, totally lost my train of thought on.
If I could just chime in real quick.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think one aspect, they're trying to animate this evil spirit into this three-dimensional world, and there's tons of evidence of it. You know, just the rituals, the symbology. I think you know, like the demons in charge. They interbreed with themselves because they're trying to control their blood. And I think a lot of this whole pharmakia, which is trying to control our blood, is a ways for them to magically, you know, incarnate this spirit. Mm-hmm. So I definitely think it's, you know, it's multifaceted. I think I do believe there are extra dimensional entities, and there's demon spirits that want to live in this three-dimensional world, this physical world. I think God is protecting us, most of us, from not having sight of demons. A lot of our human species don't have that protection, mostly like schizophrenics. They're talking with demons and being possessed, and they don't have that luxury. So I've witnessed UFO. I've had UFO experiences. They have total cloaking ability, incredible cloaking ability, to where it can change into appear as an airplane. So they have the only thing that comes to mind is the cloaking technology from Star Trek, but much more sophisticated, or Predator.
Well, that reminds me, Eric, of the second point I had lost my train of thought about, but that reminds me of the basically the human element of the UFO ET subject, and that has a lot to do with military abductions or mutilations, which have taken place, and I'm getting an echo a bit from, I think, your side, Eric, but that's something that is no longer a conspiracy or something that you should really be laughed at, because it's so well cataloged. And the question is, what's the motivation? What's the overall agenda behind that?
I think it's basically
who's executing it? Is it humans in collaboration with these
absolutely
hybrids?
I mean, look at the Crowley Hubbard,
right.
I forgot that other chemist. I mean,
Jack Parsons.
It's all about it's all about incantations to bring in the spirit, perhaps revenge for God banishing them.
And then we've talked about egregore, right? This concept of a ritualistically summoned groupthink being that exists more in an etheric or even astral sense, beyond what we can dub the physical plane. And in that sense, this incantation leading to a kind of incarnation is in many ways sort of the vehicle by which you could surmise that so-called alien beings are actually traveling. That might be their roadway, in the way that we drive on the roads and things like this. Their currency is not a physical paper or whatever thing that they exchange, but more that it's in the realm of genetics or thoughts, stuff that's very subtle, but these are avenues by which they can infiltrate and
absolutely
and indeed possess.
And I think their main priority is to possess, is to gain this flesh and body dimension. That's where they want to be. That's where they enjoy it the most. I think a lot of them are banned into this ethereal area. They can influence us. I think the whispering in the ear and stuff like that, and try to create thought patterns within humans to incantate them, which I see a lot, especially people who are paranoid or psychotics or substance abuse people. They are literally it's just like what's that movie? Where you're incantating the secret, right? Just that quantum mechanics. You push your idea and your intention. It's going to manifest.
Self-fulfilling prophecy momentum. Yep.
Well, it's interesting.
I think that's what's happening, and we're doing it. We're sacrificing children. They're taking over our whole blood. They've got our minds. I mean, we're violent creatures. We're disassociated. We're in doublethink. We don't think for ourselves. God is being banished, across the world. I think and now they have culled us, or they have sifted us from their wheat and chaff. And the ones that still believe in God don't believe in this, megalomaniac science. We are being identified, and as the Bible predicts, if you don't have the mark of the beast, you will be killed or put in a gulag,
exiled, rendered anathema.
Yeah,
right. And I think that because they've built the superhighway of cognitive and spiritual infiltration through the mass rituals, through the cultural formations and the ideologies and the symbology of evil in the world, it's acting as a kind of delta, or a sort of merging around.
Precisely.
Yeah, and so delta is a very apropos kind of Thesaurus Thursday, because it's used as the head of multiple rivers, right? Or multiple streams coming together. So in that sense, that's how they're cementing, as it were, their power within the physical plane, is by bringing a lot of different streams of perfidy and malfeasance and corruption and conflict of interest together into a kind of mass psychosis religion that masquerades as certainty and fact about the physical world.
Yeah, and empathy. Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. I sensed there's just been this, like, Leviathan is risen. I can see it. There just seems to be this open eugenics. I mean, the doublethink is just so out in the everything is so out in the open now. It's beyond. It's ridiculous. So I'm taking that as a sign. Leviathan is risen. They have captured the dimension.
Yeah, you mentioned it in the intro, the word of the day. This is the capstone. Mm-hmm. And in the thumbnail for our episode, I've got the delta symbol over the Annuit Coeptus Novus Ordo Seclorum pyramid on the back of the dollar, where they've got the all-seeing eye at the top of that capstone. And I'm thinking about the UFOs. And Xavier, you've had UFO experiences as well. I believe you explained it as a triangle craft.
Definitely.
And there are multiple, so-called whistleblowers or, experiencers, whatever you want to call it, who've reported, being abducted by these triangular craft. And so it's definitely something real. It's definitely something that needs to be discussed. Whatever your cosmology, I mean, it is kind of, in my opinion, I don't know what you guys think, but sort of the next frontier on the hoax front.
Absolutely.
I mentioned that in the description, that with COVID and their cerveza virus, sort of like it's falling apart. I'm losing patience with society, and if I am, I feel like I'm pretty patient, but I do see it falling apart. The
narrative is collapsing.
EricB, I had my 3-year-old kicked out of her gymnastics studio because she fits into the county's exception in the indoor mask mandate for she has a medical condition preventing her from wearing a mask. So actually the city says if you're under 5 you don't even need to wear one, but the establishment wants to enforce it anyways. Ugh. And we're like, nah, we're not doing that. And I try to have a conversation with them, and we're kicked out. So it's definitely here. It's definitely here. And the triangles, it's like, why am I always being flashed triangles? whether it's an NFL, Super Bowl presentation by Beyonce, and they're giving me the triangles, or it's the Freemasons, or it's the Olympics here. I've got the Olympics. They've got triangles everywhere.
Or Taco Bell.
Or Taco Bell.
It's part of the subliminal incantation.
Right.
If they constantly, in a subliminal sense, are flashing all these symbols, it's helping the Masonic building block of the triangle. It's helping building their infrastructure, which they've been doing, for a long period of time, catalyzed by the TV and the media culture. So it is come to fruition.
Yeah,
it has worked. They've captured us. We're completely captured.
James, what else would you like to present? I know you had a couple clips you wanted to play, which I have queued up if you want to jump to that.
Let me just say two things. Number one, when you look at the COVID psyop, that's what Jeff Berwick calls it, COVIDs. And he did that when he was on YouTube before he got banned. But when you look at the COVID psyop, when you consider there is a spiritual or demonic element to this, because not obviously it's a moral thing when you want to depopulate the world. It's a moral thing. You don't want people to have children. But with the spike protein, this messenger mRNA, they are changing the human genome. This is demonic, that they don't just want to depopulate the world. They don't just want to stop people from procreating.
Right.
They want to change the DNA of man.
Abominationism.
This is immoral.
Right.
The whole thing where we got into this to get to the clips is that when you look at the disclosure movement, people like Dr. Greer, medical doctor, he's no dummy. He's talking about other galaxies and stuff.
Sure.
And I said it was a strong statement when I posted on the ZNN channel. Effective disinfo has a lot of truth. He admits, okay, there is advanced technology. Fascinating topic. Okay, you go back to the past, people living 900 years. Many people, again, if it is true, people like Jack Parsons, through ritual, evidently got, through entities, he found out how to get rocket fuel. Where Werner Braun von said Jack Parsons was smarter than him. He was never trained in science or anything. So where did he get this? He was having ritual. But the point is, as this stuff goes on, people are saying, like Greer, well, yeah, there's advanced technology. Some of that may have been gone from demons. People like Stan Deo is a decent guy. He talks about they have anti-gravity stuff. He's talked about that. We won't go down the rabbit hole deep underground military bases. Some people say there's grays there. I'm not there. I'd have a hard time believing the video. It could be true, but people have said that. In any case, when you look at all this stuff, Greer and others are saying they're out there, and we want the government to disclose it. It's like, think about this. There's a logical fallacy here. If these people from other galaxies, and they were way, way beyond us, would they wait for someone like Joe Biden to be introduced? No. If they want to be introduced, they just show up. And what does he go in? He gets into the New Age stuff. He's like, yeah, you have to meditate and all. And this is how you bring them about. It's like, I think if there were people from other galaxies, I don't think they'd care about me meditating too much about that.
This is where, we really blur the lines between science nonfiction and science fiction, because we hear, there's various people who've been published on the internet, claiming to have direct communications with quote unquote ETs, or maybe they were in the military and they had some sort of special access. Channeling. There's a lot of channeling, right?
Remote viewing.
And I've heard many of them say, and I'm not putting this out there as this is how it is, but as a counter to that, what if, proceed by inquiry here at ZNN, what if, their perspective is, sort of the prime directive. We shouldn't really interfere in this way. They need to do this themselves.
They already have, though.
Right.
We have all these clips. I mean, the other thing, when you go the history of this, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but it's very fascinating. Native Americans, say American Indians, I guess, more racist. when they saw what we would call UFOs, yeah, it looked like their canoes or something in the sky. So it's always adapted to each culture. And then when people got more technology, then it was flying.
And so basically, because we're ruled by Babylonian money magic with Freemasonic triangles everywhere,
the space age.
Our demonic UFO sort of
Gestalt
ET projection is a triangle craft. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, among other things, the flying saucers. But the other thing is,
so like the flying circle, and all that. And
the other thing is that what Greer says, which I take issue with, is he goes, well, he says there's good aliens. He says they're not bad. So the government's going to lie and they're going to fake an alien invasion. And I agree with you, Dave. They're going to fake an alien invasion, but I don't believe there's any good ETs. I don't think there's any ETs, and all the EDs are bad. So they're going to fake it. But you have to understand, these are good. It's like they were concerned when we set off nuclear blast. Again, some people say there aren't nukes. I can't say one way or the other. I always thought there were, but I used to think people went to the moon until I looked at it.
Right.
So
right.
But the point is this: this is no logical fallacy. If you had this advanced civilizations and they were concerned about nukes, first off, they'd see what was going to happen. They'd just stop. It'd just be like if you had a child who was 3 years old who was going to walk into traffic.
Right.
You just pick them up. You wouldn't negotiate with them. If these people were that advanced from Pleiades or whatever, they wouldn't.
Yeah, I definitely. It's a logical fallacy to be like, these primitive beings are going to like harm the electromagnetics of the solar system.
That's what he said.
Like
it hurt them.
Yeah, no, I've definitely heard that, and I definitely agree that that's kind of a bunkism.
And
kind of buying into the military narrative around our nuclear supremacy, and this whole, again, that's a whole nother psyop, is really the nuclear power game.
Right.
I didn't know how ridiculous the evidence to the moon was. And then when I looked at it, and I was going down the rabbit hole, yours truly.
Well, no, this is it's tangential, but it's very much related to the whole ET discussion. And frankly, I don't know if you want to really get into this deeply, but to me, just space cosmology itself is part and parcel to the ET discussion, because extraterrestrial, when people think of that, what they think of, the little green men and the flying saucer, and they're coming, they're blasting off, maybe with some more advanced technology, but they're still just, their escape velocity from the gravity, and they're coming from this other spheroid that's like billions of miles away, and that whole thing, we should get into that.
Well, just the whole thing quickly, biblically, again, Earth was created for man. Man wasn't created for the Earth. So again, it's basically it's a geocentric model. You have one light for day, you have one light for darkness. But when you get into this whole idea, it's all tied into New Age and evolution. You say you have all these, we're so insignificant. You have all these civilizations. No. The Bible recognizes nothing about any other civilizations. Man was the pinnacle of God's creation. Ain't no other creatures like that out there. But we do have these spiritual beings that are trying to corrupt humanity, and they're there. The other thing that really bothered me with Greer is that he talks about NASA and the moon landings like it's real. Again, this guy is so intelligent, and if he's really got these things figured out with the ETs, I put in like 4 hours into this and that, and I just did some calculation. It says, how much fuel would it take if the moon is over 200,000? How much fuel would it take? He says we went there. I mean, he made it clear with Alex. He says we went there.
What we saw on TV was exactly how it happened.
I don't know, but he says man went there. No, didn't talk about the Van Allen radiation belt, though.
Well, see, this is kind of Alex's dodge as well. I've heard him talk about, sort of skirt around like, they faked it on TV, but there were operations, and we they had special meetings and stuff like that, and we weren't privy to any of that. And it's like, well, who told you that?
That's
Alex?
gay. That's totally gay.
That's fabulous.
Well, and here's the thing, that it's all wrapped into the mythos of Western civilization is the pinnacle manifestation of all
space race porn.
Space race porn.
I mean,
we are the mighty pale horses to conquer space. Space cowboyism. We're the only sophisticated race enough to go to space, so we need to keep going to space. That's really truly the last final frontier. I mean,
except they haven't gone.
well, right. It's based on a mythos. You know, it's all about back patting and, you know, filleting this scientismic, you know, evolutionism. Basically, we've got to go like Carl Sagan, you know, type 2 and type 3 civilizations. We've got to harness all the known energy in order to colonize other parts of the galaxy, and it's just fiction. It's purely imaginative projectionism, and that's all it is. It's all it ever has been. And but it's taught as though it's this bona fide, you know, wonderful bastion of science or something.
Settled.
To me, I think
total falsehood.
It clearly showed, in my mind, I always look at things, most simple explanation. Why, I mean, besides the demonic, there are demons behind the scenes with NASA, but why have they gone to such great lengths with NASA and the moon landings? And to me, it's very simple. This is to prepare us for the fake alien invasion.
Sure.
People growing up. I mean, I used to love Star Trek, Star Wars. You have a whole generation that believes space is real.
Yeah.
Right.
Whenever you bring up the flat Earth subject, people want to go to motives. And to me, that is a perfect motive.
Absolutely. Yeah,
I mean,
I agree.
You don't even need to talk about motives really to talk about the heliocentrism versus geocentrism, what we can observe experimentally, objectively, with easy to access tools on the Earth, rather than trusting like Jeff Bezos blasting off in some space dick. But it's I totally lost my train of thought again.
It's about an idol worship. They're creating this cult of misanthropic, derogation, where they want to show that man is insignificant and that the cosmos is so grand and man is just this aberration, just this anomaly, this accident, this space trash garbage, nothing burger.
But not creating the image of God.
Yeah, where exactly, and it's about creating a sort of false idol for destruction.
And then when the time's right, they unroll the fake alien invasion.
And then what's that going to do in a society of lemming psychology, terraqueous orb worshipping, science, it's going to create a mass suicidalist consciousness.
Well, that's why I mentioned the motive, because
that is a huge motive.
To me, it's like, well, why would they lie about that?
At that level,
like there's 10 different reasons I can think of. I mean,
there's dozens.
But that's the big one to me. If the Earth is flat, and again, you could make a real good case when I look at the evidence. If it is, to me, it all points towards a fake alien invasion.
Yep.
It all points towards that.
And also this sequestration of the population to a limited exploratory state.
Yes,
they want to keep you in a limited physical environment because physical exploration almost entails spiritual, exploration as well.
It emboldens the soul,
and that's kind of like a primal drive that we seem to have. You look at the early cartography that was done. I mean, just like my mind was blown about the sextant, and the fact that like in antiquity people navigated the realm with the stars,
right?
And whereas now we ask Google how to get around, and it's all state mandated roads,
right,
with lines drawn for you. And then you look at we were talking about this pre-COVID, the Antarctic lockdown, which is the longest standing international military treaty that's been consensually agreed to over a period of time. I mean, I think at least in contemporary times, perhaps even longer than that. Why is that? Why are we not allowed to even forget about a government funded thing. Like, you should just be able to go there if you can afford it. And that was, to the whole Alex Jones thing. I mean, he even said at one point with like Sam Tripoli and Eddie Bravo, I'll spend $1 million on a boat to go to the edge. And Eddie Bravo called his bluff like on the show. It was like, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
You're not going to do it because you know that you would never arrive at the edge because that's a false premise to begin with.
Well, that and $1
You're
million
gonna-
is probably not even close to enough.
I was going to say
they've
next.
created even more prohibitive conditions,
Right.
And it's outlandish because if it truly came to light that we've got hundreds of millions of unexplored acres, that would crash everything.
Right. All commodities.
Everything. All commodities, real estate.
But then there would be a
nothing.
great boom of exploration and
massive.
drilling and
Massive.
harvesting.
If there was freedom, and you think about
Right.
to follow up what you said as far as limiting people, think about how much just in roughly the last 100 years the world has changed. Before early 20th century League of Nations, there was no passports. If you were in China,
That's right.
and you wanted to go to the States, if you could get money, you get on a ship, you go to the States.
That's right.
And it's just so amazing how we've been what's the word, sequestered, how we've been
quarantined for generations.
how we've been enslaved. It's like no, all of a sudden all these nations are different, but why did communist China and communist Russia, why did they agree to accept the same piece of paper? For the same reason the Soviets didn't expose the moon fraud, because at the highest levels,
Right.
it's the same thing.
Right, because they realized that it had purpose and it had effectiveness for social engineering purposes, and that's why they didn't blow the lid off. They just participated in it because it was this Club of Rome Royal Society realization that, look, we just feed the plebs a false cosmology. They think of themselves as insignificant. We confirm their insignificance by a fabricated event. They'll all kill themselves out of fear.
The other thing is, think about how these people think in advance. 100 years ago, they're saying, okay, before we could ever get people, like in the States, to accept a travel restriction between states, let's get everyone on board so that they will never think going to another country without a piece of paper.
Yeah.
Now we got a
And-
vaccine
and-
passport. We have a vaccine passport.
Well, see, this is
egregious.
this is why we talk about the mark of the beast, which is, of course, an infamous part of the Bible, right? And it's here in different forms, like from a contemporary point of view. But I hear that, like, oh, it's coming, or it's just around the corner, and I'm like, no, it's been here.
Long time.
The enumeration at birth, which started to happen in the 30s and even a little earlier than that, in some areas, was the sort of the coup against the churches, because prior to that it was just a family or church Bible which said who was born, who got married, all that stuff was registered with the church. But by bringing that sort of societal function into the government, that was a total merger of the church and state.
It was a coup.
It was a coup.
It was a coup.
And that's been in place for a long time. And then, of course, they went on top of that with the Social Security number, which is tied to
which was never supposed to be used for identification.
Never. And actually, it's still in the federal codes and all that. Like, you really, when a lot of folks say it's required for you to apply for a given thing, it's actually not. If you push the issue, it's, legally, it's really not required. All the way down to banking. Really, they can't disallow you from banking. Of course they can and they will, but legally I'm saying they're not supposed to. But
Can you get a passport without a social security number? Is it possible?
Probably at
Talk
great
to
expense.
Epstein.
Right.
He had 3 of them.
Right.
Without his money.
Exactly. Or
With
go
enough
to the
money.
border, right? Or
Right.
McAfee,
Right.
No, I mean, to my earlier point about enumeration at birth, Social Security, that COVID vaccine ID, it's just Social Security 3.0 or 4.0 or 4.5 or whatever it is. Ross Perot, he was a billionaire because he made an early fortune at IBM selling the systems which basically helped the government process Medicare, Medicaid records and, match and merge, Social Security number with name and address and all this stuff. And, it's like, that's our entrepreneur. That's our example of like an innovator, is somebody who's skimming off of this huge, like disgusting social welfare state. And good for him, I guess. It was like selling umbrellas in the rain, when the government was trying to sort of modernize their systems or whatever. But now it's on a totally different level, and I could pull up some videos of people like tattooing their QR code.
Yeah, I've seen it.
That's right.
And getting scanned just to go into a McDonald's,
Yeah,
and they're proud about it. They're proud.
They're
about
so
it.
savvy. They're so with it. They're so sophisticated.
Wow, it's so convenient. And see, this is, I think, in our January 2020 episode, we talked about the Real ID, which was looming. It was supposed to come out like in North Carolina in October of 2020, but of course it got delayed because of COVID. But it wasn't actually because of COVID. It was because it was always meant to come out in 2022.
But you could opt out though. I opted out.
Yeah, you're being sarcastic,
No, I'm
right?
serious. Yeah.
No, I know, and I was preparing for opting out, but like, it's like, it's kind of like in Australia at a certain point, like, yeah, you can opt out of the vaccine. You just can't buy groceries. You can't travel domestically on an airplane. You can't go into a concert. It's like, oh yeah, it's optional, but except everything you're used to doing, you can't do anymore.
Well, some states, North Carolina is the best, but some states did make it mandatory. Others completely opted out. North Carolina took the middle road, and you could choose when you renew your driver's permit, your driver's license.
So the middle of the road is this whole incremental
of course
incentive program, which we talked about before. Like, okay, how are they going to get the guns from us?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's going to be through supply chain disruption. That's going to
like banning Russian
create
ammo.
Starvation, and then we can offer them like food cards in exchange for their guns.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like with they took the middle of the road, which means you can opt out of it, but you basically have to get an anal probe at the airport, because they already have that whole system now with like I showed just a minute ago on our Instagram channel, passports. When government takes your right to travel and sells it back to you. So they always do this where they take your right, make it inconvenient as hell, and then they're like, oh, for a nominal fee, sir, we'll give you some of your convenience back. And that's like when I used to have to travel in the airports quite a bit, and I'd be going, of course I would never go through the body scanners. I would always like, well, they say, you want a pat down? I'm like, no, I don't want one. I answer them directly. No, I don't want one. But I'd end up having to give one just to like get where I'm going. But on the way through the line, there would be like this kiosk for Clear ID, and it was some private company, that collaborates with the government, and they basically, provide, it's like a QR code scanning driver's license, know your customer type
pre-verified
thing. Basically. Yeah. And it's like, TSA Global ID or whatever they have. You pay an additional $100 and then you get to skip the line. They socially engineer you to pay them more money, give them your data, and consent to be basically tracked, traced, and
then that prevents that shows the illusion in people's minds that compliance is sophistication, that it's a sign of enlightenment.
Yes.
That, I'm already so with it that I'm hyper compliant.
I had colleagues say, oh, well, nobody wants to travel with you, Corey. Dave.
Right.
Because nobody wants to travel with you because, you take this extra time to get through the this and that. And I was like, well, it's kind of worth it to me to have some sort of feeling that I'm at least, presenting a challenge. I'm at least questioning the order, and I'm refusing to like share my data and pay them extra money.
Well, isn't it true though that the closest thing to the fountain of youth is maintaining your rebel nature?
Well, that might be why I haven't sprouted a gray hair yet, but I'm well on that way.
Yeah, I mean, but the idea is like, forever young is the sort of goal of these psychopaths.
Yeah. Right.
But it's in their jealousy that they show that they are forever decrepit and forever dying by imposing all these control freak measures on people who are truly more endowed with the ability to explore and have reverence for creation.
There's no better evidence of that to me than the disparity in the meme sphere between the left and I'll just say the non-left, because I'm not even gonna say conservative or right, all right or whatever. But I've been seeing all these left memes trying to like put down COVID questioners and so on and so forth.
Oh yeah,
it's pathetic. It's really pathetic. It's like you are a follower, and you're submissive. You're weak. Do you really think like who thinks that's cool?
They're trying to package it in ever more verbose and text-laden images that, you just have to comply because compliance is a sign of sophistication. That's one of their favorite mind control tricks, is to try to get people to think that going along with the program entails intelligence when it's actually usually the opposite. They're trying to stupefy people decade after decade more and more by driving home this message that just go along with the herd. And if someone asks you to jump off a bridge, you ask how high. And then that response indicates your level of standing and your responsibility and your morality and your maturity in the society. Again, these are all dead Scrooge projections.
Good morning. I'm practicing my step-daddy voice.
Sorry, I wanted to play this one to your point.
Wear your mask. Wear your mask. It is very important for you to put on that mask. This not no joke, and this is not no rundown. Wear your mask. If you vaccinated or not, throw on that mask and stop lying, telling people you vaccinated and you know dang on well you ain't vaccinated. You up here trying to get people sick.
Was that a man or a woman?
That's Andy Caldwell. He's not gay no more.
Well, I mean, it seems to be Exhibit A for what I was just talking about in the compliance culture, manifesting clearly mentally deficient individuals who think they're smart, and that's the entire rigmarole. That's the whole hullabaloo, is getting people to accept their mental slavery in the form of their own dumb estication as a basis for virtue signaling their intelligence in this inverted system.
In this guy's case, he makes a living off of his internet personality, which was born out of this viral clip, which took place years ago, 6 years ago, where he clearly is living two different lives. Let's take a look at this and then take a quick break.
Schizophrenia,
Tonight, do you believe that the Lord tonight has set you free? Yes, sir. Turn around and tell those people. Tell them. I'm not gay no more. I am delivered. I don't like men no more. I said I like women. Women. I said women. I'm not gay. I would not date a man. I would not carry a purse. I would not put on makeup. I will
I will.
Wear your mask.
Right.
Was he joking in this?
Or women. Now listen, y'all praise God with him. Hold on, wait a minute. Somebody believe God with him. Hey! We don't just preach condemnation. We preach reconciliation. Hallelujah! God, help him, Lord. Help him, Lord. Help him. I wish I had some shown-up believers that'll come down here and dance with him and tell him, you can do it in the name of Jesus.
Allegedly, he had no idea this was being recorded and televised, and then it made its way onto the internet, and like in a week or so, he was making like $10,000 a week social media advertising, and now he's telling you to wear your mask.
Does he say he's a homo anymore?
No, he's still digging in. I want women, but
Okay.
his lips tell me otherwise.
Well, and it's, I don't know, that is just a classic sign of race to the bottom, derivative appeals based on emotion and social conformity, and go along with the herd mentality. And that has become the currency of day-to-day broadcasting in every single avenue.
I think he might be a good applicant for Spirit Airlines. I'm not sure if you've seen some of the videos of their employees, but they're very intent on enforcing the CDC guidelines around mask wearing. So he might be a good fit for them.
Oh man, and the thing is, yeah, you have people like Sean Penn, right? Come out and say, oh yeah, I believe in some parts of the Second Amendment, but you can't just go around pointing guns at people, and that's what it's like being an unvaccinated person.
Did you see Chet Hanks?
Unbelievable. It's like that. It just is prima facie evidence of how stupid a lot of these people think their audience is, and maybe how stupid they themselves have become, because it's all self-fulfilling prophecy. Why would he say such a stupid thing if he wasn't himself kind of stupid?
Right.
Carrying a lethal weapon around and pointing at people with breathing fresh air without a muzzle or a jab. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how just race to the bottom it has become. In what baseline appeals can we make to the lemming plebs to continue to be lemming plebs? That's really where it's gone.
Vaccines and donuts.
And lottery tickets. And $200.
Yeah, I mean, Roy Cooper's Twitter is completely nauseating. He's just a complete lackey for the big pharma vaccine interest.
It's just conflict of interest everywhere.
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 It's a matter of fact. I mean, I had a lawyer tell me when I was expressing the details of a traffic court case where I was challenging the presumption of probable cause in the pullover to begin with. What crime did I commit? Who's the injured party? And he was like, oh yeah, you get nowhere with that. The judge works with the police officer every day. I mean, that's just how it is. And I was like, wow, well, what about my Fourth Amendment? My right to not be molested, in travel. And he's like, oh, they threw that out the window a long time ago. This is a lawyer.
Right.
Retired lawyer. It's just, I guess he's retired. He felt like he could tell me the truth,
Well, because the legal system is just a way to catalog people as resources. It's just a way to make them into cattle.
And that's what court really, if you spend any time in a courthouse, you get a sense that you're
like cattle.
You're witnessing a human trafficking
absolutely
operation happen in your hometown.
Right around the corner.
You know,
just
some
down the hill.
are nicer than others, but I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, that's what I felt when I was there.
And well, this is a point that I love, and I don't know if I've said this before, but all the law is second-rate philosophy enforced by third-rate people.
Yeah, I mean,
That's all the
I
law
remember
ever is.
being in court. You know, I was moved to the very, very end of the docket because they wanted to waste my entire day at work, and I'm looking over at this important lady sitting behind like the judge's bench, and she's playing Candy Crush on her phone.
Yeah.
I'm just like, wow, like you come here to work every day and see these people like get locked up, and you're sitting there playing Candy Crush. Like, wow, it was kind of surreal.
It's Lovecraftian. You know, you come into the courtroom. You don't even have to face the accused anymore.
Well, not
you don't even have
you're
to
gonna
face
get
your
locked
accuser.
up. You're already locked up. First of all,
Right.
You know, you can't even go to court anymore. It's
Right.
all, you know, virtual now over Chinese streaming video networks. You know, amazing shit. But hey, let's take a quick bio break. We are, let's see, how long have we been streaming?
Almost 2
here?
hours, right?
Yeah, we are.
Hour.
Error occurred. Please try again later. I don't know what's going on with YouTube, but we're still online with Theta.
Of course, because Theta is the better medium by which we're going to share video content.
I know.
I mean, it's like T-minus, 300 days before it there's a mass exodus. I mean, YouTube is the new E-bombs world, okay?
Yeah.
The only thing that it's good for is tutorials and cat videos. All right?
Yeah.
If you want journalism, if you want hard-hitting criticism and reporting,
we're back. We're back. We're still on YouTube.
Okay,
but yeah,
I mean,
no, I hear you.
It's just unbelievable. Like, and people literally just don't bat an eye. They don't bat an eye that there is no First Amendment, there is no Constitution.
They've
there is
disappeared.
nothing.
They've disappeared so much. You know, it's hard to remember.
Hundreds of millions of posts. Literally.
Easily. Well, let's take a quick break here. Be right back for you folks.
I require the solace of the shadows and the dark of the night. Sunshine is my destroyer. There shall never be another dawn. One would not think that they could contain such power. One could rule the universe with it. You must find them for me and destroy them.
And we're back. And I think that's a good entry point. Welcome back to the Zetetic News Cast, episode 25. This is episode 25 on the 26th of August. And I am so happy to be here with Xavier, James Iredell, and EricB to talk about the extraterrestrial threat. And I've got Samus Aran up here from Metroid with some epic tunes. You know, all this fantasy stuff about space, spaceships, aliens, who we are, where we come from, blah blah blah. And it's been a riveting conversation so far. But I do want to play some clips that James provided to expound upon, you know, what was discussed in the first half of the this show. So let's start with Age of Deceit, Fallen Angels, and the New World Order. I think that's the first clip you wanted to play. Is there anything you want to say before we jump into it?
No, it's just those two clips. If you got the second one after the first one, that's just those two clips.
Okay, let me get the time code over here. Thanks. So that I can jump at the right time. So we're going to play for 4 minutes and 32 seconds this documentary, Age of Deceit, Fallen Angels, and the New World Order. Let's check it out.
The sacred promise given to the inner members of the New World Order. It is also the same concept being promoted by transhumanists and the road to attain singularity and human immortality through the use of technology in the field of biology and genetics. I believe that all of these various tentacles are leading to the same place and the same goal. More people today believe that there is life outside of Earth than ever before. A 2008 Scripps UFO poll conducted by Thomas Hargrove and Guido H. Stample showed that over 74% of 18 to 24-year-olds believed it was likely that intelligent life exists on other planets. This is perhaps due to several factors, including our current growth in scientific knowledge and understanding of the size and vastness of the universe, but also the propaganda perpetuated by our media. Science fiction has exploded in America and the world as a staple theme for films, movies, books, and video games. Could this all be part of the plan to prepare the world for disclosure?
I think the New Age, as well as the mainstream sort of media, and I mean like movies and television shows, and everybody's been shoving this alien UFO thing down our throats because it has so many uses for the Antichrist system. I've said many times, I don't know if this is the way that it will all be set up. It is just a really convenient way if it does go down like this, because it does do three main things that are needed for the Antichrist system. Number one, it causes the world to reject God. We've been sold this erroneous idea that if aliens exist, then God doesn't. So the headlines the day after would read, you know, God proven wrong or whatever. The whole world would be united in its rejection of God overnight. So that certainly would play in, obviously, to the biblical account of this world order at the end of time. Also, we would believe ourselves to be God. This one would take a little bit longer to sink in, but the idea that aliens, in a real sort of evolution kind of way, just evolved, and that it could be sold to us that they were somehow our creators in the sense that they genetically modified us, or they might have some excuse to the origin of life or something to that effect. Ultimately, we would see them as gods in the sense of their perhaps abilities or their technological advancement, and it really depends on this point of how and what they say about us, if they say anything, or if in the discovering of them that it is implied in some way that we ourselves could be like them and therefore like gods. And that really goes into the third part, which is the evolution. I think that this concept of evolution is crucial to so much of what the Antichrist system does, especially the genocide based on belief system that happens in the end time scenario, really requires, as it did in the Third Reich, an idea of evolution. There's a concept that there's certain people that are not fit for the new system, the new evolution. They were sort of helping humanity evolve by the elimination of those that weren't ready for the new age, the new world. Hitler believed in the fifth root race of Blavatsky, but yet I think this new system is going to have a very unique version of evolution. And of course, the appearance of aliens really validates that on a worldwide scale. No longer do you have to, have this sort of underground preaching of theosophy as it was in Hitler's time, but rather the whole world is united in this understanding, or perceived understanding, of potential evolution coming. After all, the aliens are here. We can be like them. They just simply evolved like we have the potential to do. We can become like them. We can communicate telepathically or whatever, as long as we are willing to take that next step. And there's this great precipice that we're now at this ability to move to this next level, but it's all going to be in the context of God has just recently been disproven, but yet there will be people on earth that can't quite go with the new system because they're stuck in the old paradigm of God does exist and the Bible was accurate and these aliens are a deception. Those people will be presented as enemy number one and will be viewed as the thing that's holding us back from the potential evolution.
I already see this happening.
Oh yeah, this is well underway.
Because you could argue Cerveza virus is an alien threat.
Absolutely.
And it has been basically positioned that way. And in a way, we talk about how dimensional, EDs, dimensionality, that there are other dimensions which you can't see. is a hard thing for people to grasp. I don't know, maybe it's not, because they're already so afraid of something that they can't see, and that is the boogie virus. That, you know, may or may not be a bioweapon that is actually killing people, but is nevertheless invisible and foreign invading threat. So they're already primed. That prompt is already primed for exactly what this clip is talking about.
And you already see people that are refusing the agenda being castigated and vilified.
Absolutely. That's what I'm saying. It's already happening. I'm experiencing it. I think you guys are experiencing it. Eric, you there? You're experiencing it?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's quite something. I mean, I think, you know, we talked about it. It's the same evil that's always existed, resurfacing again in just the contemporary form.
Yep. Yes.
New lies for old. That's right.
Yep.
So the next portion you wanted to play was 105 right here. Let's check it out.
What is it?
Scholars with no religious affiliation who have looked into this topic of UFOs and ETs for several decades have come to very interesting conclusions. Jack Vallée, a venture capitalist, computer scientist, author, ufologist, and former astronomer who helped build the precursor to what we know as the Internet, has studied the UFO phenomenon for over 3 decades. After looking into the relationship between UFOs, cults, religious movements, demons, angels, ghosts, and psychic phenomenon, Vallée changed his proposed hypothesis from the UFO phenomenon being an extraterrestrial origin, in other words, craft and beings from another planet or faraway galaxy, to a multi-dimensional visitation hypothesis, or interdimensional. In his book, Messengers of Deception, Vallée states, quote, "Human beings are under the control of a strange force that bends them in absurd ways, forcing them to play a role in a bizarre game of deception," end quote. Later in the same book, he states, quote, "The UFO phenomenon represents a manifestation of a reality that transcends our current understanding of physics. The UFOs are physical manifestations that cannot be understood apart from their psychic and symbolic reality. What we see in effect here is not an alien invasion, it is a control system which acts on humans and uses humans," end quote. J. Allen Hynek, a U.S. astronomer, professor, and ufologist, best remembered for his contributions in the field of UFOs and acting as scientific advisor to UFO studies taken by the U.S. Air Force, again came to same conclusions of the UFOs and alleged extraterrestrial phenomenon. In his book, Edge of Reality, he states, quote, "If UFOs are somebody else's nuts and bolts hardware, then we must still explain how such tangible hardware can change shape before our eyes, vanish in a Cheshire cat manner, not even leaving a grin, seemingly melt away in front of us, or apparently materialize mysteriously before us without apparent detection by persons nearby or in neighboring towns. We must wonder too where UFOs are hiding when not manifesting themselves to human eyes," end quote. The overall consensus seems to be that these crafts which are being seen have the ability to manifest as physical objects and at the same time manipulate time and space as to become invisible or perform aerial maneuvers that defy our current understanding of physics and nature. The deeper side to this phenomenon are the abduction accounts recorded by millions of people all over the world, regardless of time, race, culture, and upbringing. Dr. John Mack, professor at Harvard Medical School, a psychiatrist and writer, also looked into the UFO and abduction phenomenon for several decades and came to similar conclusions as Vallée and Hynek. Although he recently passed away, his contributions to the study of ufology and alien abductions is highly touted and greatly respected. He states in an interview with Nova Online when asked if the phenomenon is literally physical or psychological, stating, quote, "Yes, it's both. It's both literally physically happening to a degree, and it's also some kind of psychological, spiritual experience occurring and originating perhaps in another dimension. And so the phenomenon stretches us, or it asks us to stretch to open to realities that are not simply the literal physical world, but to extend to a possibility that there is other unseen realities from which our consciousness, our, if you will, learning processes over the past several hundred years have closed us off. End quote.
What seems to be the case is they come from some other domain, some place, maybe not another star or maybe from another dimension, but they manifest, they show up here in our physical world. People have a number of cases where people are just playing gone, a child comes into the mother's room, Mom, you weren't there during the night when I came. There is burned earth outside where the ships have landed. There is physical, it may not satisfy our criteria of proof, but proof may be something which only operates within the frame of evidence of this physical world in the box you mentioned before that we live in. This is what's going on here is something in some ways more subtle. In other words, something that's coming from another dimension into our world, which is very commonly experienced in other cultures, but not in this culture.
Reminds me of another Harvard medical doctor who had a out-of-body experience when he slipped into a coma and came back to write a book about going through different dimensions, essentially having a sort of trans-dimensional journey to a whole other plane of existence, you might say. And came back to, I mean, he was a neurosurgeon, this guy, so he had as you can imagine, a very dug in position about, you know, supernatural versus natural and physicality of human mobility and all of that. Totally reversed on all of that stuff when he had this personal experience due to a brain tumor, of all things. But those things and UFO experiences are very much tied together. Because this whole abduction phenomenon, I've had an out-of-body where you might say I was abducted because I left my body, my physical body. I wasn't taken aboard a ship, but I have had other psychedelic experiences where that sort of visual manifested for me. I've spoken to people who have supposedly worked on physical ships that military had engineered, reverse engineered allegedly from cooperations with extra dimensional beings. We're talking about like Army people, and I've retold these stories to other military service people, and I've gotten all sorts of weird reactions when I talk about, deep underground military bases with anti-gravitic technologies, secret space program, railway system under the country. I don't typically go as far to say there's some sort of high-level collaboration with a extra-dimensional force. Usually the conversation ends before we get to that point. But I get all sorts of weird reactions. So this is definitely, if you ask enough people in your life, whether they're a relative or like some sort of weird, like you bump into someone, like my wife has bumped into NSA agents when she's been at like a bachelorette party in DC. There's not that many degrees of separation between someone that you know and this like awareness within the government structure that there's something way more going on here than what we're told is actually going on. Certainly in public schools, they're not Can you imagine?
There's stories, you've probably heard, that Eisenhower cut a deal with the beings, the extra dimensionals. Again, it's presented normally as extraterrestrials. I think one of his granddaughters attests
Laura.
that's true. But it's very interesting. Again, some people say, once again, I said this before, I'm not saying it's true. Other people have said in some of the deep underground military bases, you actually have Greys there. You have Nordics there. The next clip, when you get there, is by an interesting guy. He was a preacher. He had government experience. He'd been, I think, technology in the government, and then he became a preacher for, 30-odd years. And so he's one of the few people that has a really good handle on the Bible, but did research in these areas. Normally you get people in either one or two categories where they're really, really good with the Bible, and they just haven't touched any of this. They think it's all crazy. You have other people that are deeply into all this stuff, and yeah, their knowledge of the Bible is just really, really sparse. This guy, Chuck Mister, is now with the Lord. Very interesting perspective.
Revelation 17, the beast.
You want to say something,
Oh,
Xavier?
I was just gonna say, just going back to your idea, James, about aliens being sort of extra dimensional conjurings in a way. This directly lines up with Crowley and Parsons, the Alamantra workings of summoning Lamb out in the desert, and this being who he referred to as Lamb is remarkably, the illustration that he references is remarkably similar to this whole Gray's alien mythology, or this cosmology of little gray men who visit us and whatnot. So in a way, you could say that aliens have no existence outside of our projected import into their being. So the more we project importance in their existence, the more likely they're going to manifest to us.
Yeah, that's a good point. A lot of people stress that too, that obviously I'm a Christian, I believe the Bible, I think there's a certain level of protection about me. But even someone who would be born again, to use a biblical nomenclature, if you invite an entity to be involved in your life, and that could start out through either heavy drug use or something, like the vampire mythos. You always have to, Alex Jones used to mention that the vampire couldn't just break in, you'd have to let him in. But what you said is very relevant, Xavier, about Crowley. Crowley, one of his disciples was Jack Parsons, and it's very clear this is Crowley was born 1875, primarily known for his occult writings and teachings. He founded the religion of Thelema, if I'm pronouncing it right, which became adopted by the Ordo Templis Ordinis, as well as the magical order Argentium Astrum, the Order of the Silver Star. He was also a highly controversial member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, where he was known by the magical name of Frater Perdurabo. Crowley's lifestyle was absolutely shocking in the era in which he lived. Besides his interest in the occult, he was sexually promiscuous with both genders at a time when homosexuality was still illegal in Britain, frequented prostitutes, was vocally defiant against Christianity and Victorian and post-Victorian prudeness towards sexual subjects, and was a drug addict. Okay, Crowley again got into all this stuff. He said in 1904 he encountered a being known as Aiwass, described as a minister to Horus, the central deity in Thelema, and as a holy guardian angel. Aiwass dictated the Book of the Law, which Crowley wrote down and published, becoming a central Thelemic test. Crowley was also tied to British intelligence. Jack Parsons, again, was his disciple. Parsons died, supposedly in an explosion. We don't know. Maybe he was executed, but he was in his 30s. Again, there's no reason. Parsons had no technical background, yet how'd he get all this knowledge about rockets? He was engaged in these rituals, some of them involving sex. And this is a pattern throughout time where people get into ritual. You see now with CERN, if you guys have touched on CERN,
yes,
they want to open up a portal, not to another galaxy, to another dimension.
Right.
And then even when you look at CERN, it's just a giant circle. It's like they're treating it like a cauldron, the stirring of the pot, so to speak.
There you go.
Yeah.
Accelerating particles. all this
Just think about the process of your thoughts. Where are your thoughts coming from?
Right.
Everything is transdimensional. What is truth? Morality. Where is this coming from? This is in the physical. It's transdimensional. That's our process. But the idea is trying to let go of God and his rules to, transdial into that knowledge, let go of God, and then transdial into this evil demonic system. And we create in third dimension whatever we're unconsciously thinking about.
Beast that thou sawest was and is not, shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, go into perdition, and they that dwell among the earth shall wonder whose names are not written in the book of life. The only thing that can protect you from all of this is your position in Christ. Second Thessalonians goes on, and because they receive not the love of the truth that they might be saved, for this cause God shall send them strong delusion that they should believe the lie. Don't assume that you can get saved after the rapture. People will be saved after the rapture. But if you've had an opportunity and turned down the redemption of Christ, this is what it's talking about. Because they receive not the love of the truth that they might be saved, and for this cause God will send them a strong delusion that they should believe the lie. Be careful. Don't play that game. If you're going to accept Christ, do it now. Don't wait, or you'll be vulnerable to the big deception. Now, the most absurd war is coming. I always fascinate with Psalm 2, which is a dialogue among the Trinity. Why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us. And it goes on. This whole idea that the world is going to take up arms against God himself astonishes me. I can understand people not believing God or rejecting God, yes. I can't imagine going after him warfare. It just doesn't make sense. Why would the world go after him? I think the Nephilim thing will explain it. It's interesting that the alien types, if you read you wallow through all this literature, Dr. Mark Eastman and I spent a lot of time going through that stuff. You'll discover there's 3 types of these so-called alien creatures that emerge. The grays, those are the diminutives, short. You always see them in the entertainment media. There's another group that seem to appear, that's sometimes called the Nordics or the Pleiadians. They're about 6 foot tall. They're blonde, blue-eyed. They look like people. Could be around us now. And there's a third group that are the most grotesque of them all, what it's sometimes called the reptilians. These are scaly, weird creatures that look like a refuge from some grade B science fiction movie. There's weird stuff. Well, these 3 always show up. It's interesting, in Revelation 16, verse 13, 14, I've always wondered, how does the world go to war against God? And John tells us, I saw 3 unclean spirits like what? Like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the false prophet. For they are the spirits of devils working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. I think God is going to use some kind of strange creatures, demonic or whatever, to draw the world into this confrontation that is part of the climax that Revelation and the Old Testament deal with. Well, what's our challenge, you and I?
This great confrontation. Well, as we talked about, I don't know if we were recording or this was off the record. And as I open, that with the epic music, it does seem like there's this great confrontation happening. Everything seems to be coming to a head. Everything seems epic and more exponential than the last thing. Just the accelerationism with the medical martial law and the disparity between the 2 different, there's a schism psychologically in the population, that the disparity between the 2, it's growing like a delta, at this sharp angle. we've talked about it before, the Civil War. It's within everybody's family. It's with their friends. Society itself is pitted itself against each other, and it's all over this invisible threat. But once we get wise to that on a majority basis, they have to come up with something else.
Well, and that's why I do think that they are shuffling through the bag of tricks with a lot of speedy ferocity right now, because all of the lies within
within the last 12 months. Remember, how distant of a memory was George Floyd? But that was literally a year ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, just a little over.
Racism was a pandemic public health threat.
Oh, that's right.
Now we're on to Delta variant, and it's I'm yawning.
Because
I don't know what your experience is, but most people seem pretty jaded on the fear.
Well, it's because people are starting to see it as pandemania. They're starting to see it as, look, this is pandemonium masquerading as a biomedical epidemic. And it's the use of the terms, again, going back to all the word magic that we've broken down in previous episodes, it's not a surprise that pandemonium and pandemic are the same exact root.
Right.
And what are the two letters missing out of pandemic?
Demon.
It's O-N. Pandemonic episode, right? I mean, it's a way to conjure this egregore of mass hysteria, pandemania.
Do you guys think that they could actually pull off this fake alien invasion and people believe it? I mean,
I see several avenues by which they could.
Yeah, I think they could. I think they still have to soften us up. When you talk to James Corbett, love his research. He did a program on the fake alien invasion, and when he mentions it from time to time, he thinks a ways off. But when he made that was before COVID. So many psyops are working within COVIDs. One being, how much will the people accept? And that's part of the reason why I think they went with Biden over Trump, is they wanted to see how ridiculous could it be that will the so-called left still accept him when they continue to unmask him. I predicted they were gonna turn on him, and they have. And I think that's part of the psyop, to see, okay, how far and hard can we push people, and they'll just go along with it. And in other words, I mean, you guys have seen this. The whole thing with Fauci, it's not when government gets nailed doing stupid things, they say, well, they're incompetent. Fauci says masks don't work. Then was a month later, you have to wear a mask. This is all intentional to break the will of the people.
I agree.
So they'll do whatever you want.
It's a clear demoralization,
absolutely,
humiliation program. Everything from the Afghanistan situation to the intentional double standards, the intentional flaunting of not following their own rules,
right?
The intentional nonsensical nature of everything.
2 masks in Philadelphia.
Right. Oh God, the 2 mask thing just kills me.
Why not 3?
Why not just asphyxiate yourself to death?
Then you can't spread the virus.
Yeah, that'd be too obvious.
Yeah. I mean, personal example. I mentioned this earlier. I think our family was kicked out of the gymnastics gym because we had the temerity to call the owner and say, well, we got back from vacation and saw that there's a new indoor mask mandate, and I read the mandate, and I just want to let you know that we've got medical conditions preventing us from wearing a mask at the gym. Is that going to be a problem? And they dodged me for a week, and I followed up. An hour before our class, I called the gym, and I get picked up. Hey, I'm trying to follow up, because class is coming up. I just want to make sure everything's cool when we come. And they're like, oh, yeah, I was told by the owner to let you know that we're going to refund your money. And I'm like, oh, so like I'm not even going to have a conversation about this? Like, you know, all I'm saying is, I mean, we'll comply with the order, but, you know, we have an exception because it says right here, you know, if you're under 5 years old, you shouldn't wear a mask. And if you have difficulty breathing, you shouldn't wear a mask. And if you have a medical or behavioral condition.
I have behavioral condition.
Yes.
Opposition defiance disorder.
Absolutely.
Well, there's so many different like ways I can turn this on them.
Right.
But like I didn't even get the opportunity. They were just like,
we're done.
They're like, well, we just want to make sure everybody's safe. And I was like, but hold on. The county isn't making you tell me to wear a mask.
No.
I'm telling you that I'm following the county order. I'm just informing you that we have a medical condition. She's like, well, I haven't read the declaration. I'm like, well, then why are you telling me, you know, I'm sorry, sir. All I can tell you is we're refunding your money. And I was like, wow. So you're just discriminating against me. The owner was so butthurt because I said you're discriminating against me. You know, I kind of used that same.
She just told me you identify as black.
Right.
Or vaccinated, and then I would have been allowed in.
Black
which
vaccinated.
I think is another viable sort of like judo Jedi mind trick move is like, because all these, this is another valid topic for all this, is the mandate coming through the, it's literally fascism. Like,
of course,
the government's like, you companies, I think you should do it. You should mandate the vaccine.
Right.
And the companies are like already mandating it without the government telling them to. And then the ones who resist it, well, they'll be labeled as the problem. And so now the government has a pre-justification for enacting laws that will then mandate. And it's like, well, it's only because of these rebels over here. Most of them were pretty good and they're compliant, you know, and this and that, and they're keeping everybody safe. Meanwhile, like, companies are turning the switch off on freedom by turning off the money spigot to pay for travel, you know, based on all these crazy criteria. And, you know, it's up to the individuals to be like, no. But the thing is, that's a catch-22, because now the productivity of the country is going to be destroyed.
Yeah, that's the whole design.
And that's the point. And it's like a catch-22, which is right around the corner. That's next year.
Yeah.
Catch-22.
There's a lot going on. Some people still believe it. I was in Trader Joe's, which is very New World Order, and I'm not exaggerating. A lady behind the counter, checking me out, had on gloves and a mask when the mask mandate was lifted, and in between customers, she put sanitizer over her gloves. So there are some people that are that far gone. You go to Cary, which is in the community where I live, and because of their socioeconomic background, I think there's more white guilt and stuff. It ties into the hyper adaptation and compliance with the idiocy. So there's a lot of things that are converging. How could they do the alien invasion? A lot has to occur. I think three main things. They'd use advanced tech, which in and of itself could have been acquired through demonic entities. Deepfake and sophisticated holograms. You look at 9/11. I was fooled for years, and I thought a plane absorbed into one of the towers. For years, I saw that hundreds of times, and I realized it's obviously fake, but I believed it. And then outright demonic miracles. There is demonic power. You could read about that in Exodus 7, where when the wise men of Egypt confronted Moses and Aaron, they could duplicate some of the miracles to a point. Aaron laid down his staff; it became a serpent. They did the same thing, but then his staff, when it was a serpent, ain't theirs. They can multiply. They can make water blood, but then they couldn't make gnats. And then they told Pharaoh, these magicians, they told Pharaoh, this is the finger or the power of God. So they have an ability to duplicate these miracles. And you think about, especially right now, I don't think we're ready for it tomorrow, but if they bring down the internet, a lot of people have talked about the cyber false flag is coming. You want to generate fear? Shut down the internet or the power good for a week.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I'm amazed people don't store more food just for that, like who are in hurricane pathways and stuff like that. And I've gotten weird looks and stuff talking about storing food, and I'm like, y'all live in the hurricane zone. Like, what's wrong with you?
I don't tell people I'm in a different community than you, but yeah, I just don't tell people unless I know them well.
Yeah.
Well, and
probably good.
The other avenue, just to expand on those options, is perhaps we could be being led astray slightly by the whole intergalactic visitation, and that there is another realm of occult alien, and that is the subaquatic elder gods of the Lovecraftian universe, of these underwater beings that emerge out of the oceans and feed, essentially. And that is what the flood essentially is these great beings coming out of the water. And that actually plays into the evolutionary aspect of men. We truly are insignificant. We're a lower life form. Our lifespan is puny compared to these massive
like the Kraken,
Cthulhu, right? So they're more easily able to do chimeric displays out at the ocean, as well as up in the sky. So they, in all of these various, quote unquote sightings, Neil deGrasse went on Joe Rogan and said, we need a more convincing display of these aliens. How come it's just naval pilots that see these little, monochromatic blips out at sea? We need live stream. We need people to live stream it.
Like 1952 when they shut down DC twice.
Well, it's also War of the Worlds. Remember War of the Worlds? They broadcasted it. And they had thousands of people calling in thinking it was literal.
Right.
And that was without any visual stimulus whatsoever.
Right. That was intentional. That was part of the World Order plan. I'm 100% convinced. And you had people freaking out then. And like you said, that was just radio. Now with the power of television, if tomorrow we woke up and there was a mothership over, like, let's say just 7-8 world cities, if people saw it on TV, they're going to believe it. Even people I go to church with that believe the Bible, I bet a lot of them won't believe it.
Sure. And it could be, again, a variety of ways and means. Oh, there's these motherships in Moscow, and we found like a Loch Ness style alien out off of the Atlantic.
Well,
and
even
it's
if
a combination.
Right, even if they didn't find Mothra.
Right.
If people on TV, without seeing them with their own eyes, if they saw that, and the world media reported, just like the world media reported the moon landings, and the Soviets could have disproved that they didn't want to. If they see it on TV, they're going to believe it. I mean, this is what we're dealing with COVID. I mean,
That's
well,
right.
this
video clip is also very apropos.
Hologram?
Because this is all hologram, phantasmagoria, high def image manipulation.
Well, it's augmented reality is what they call it.
Yeah.
So you're wearing some sort of device, or in the future it'll be, implant, or you're holding, like right there, that's a very 1.0 implementation, which is holding a tablet in front of your face.
Right.
But in the future, their ideas an intersection with your very neuroscience to, create
a new reality,
this sort of trans-dimensional existence where they can superimpose egregores onto your neural circuitry.
That's right.
And I think we covered this in the last show, that the whole goal, admitted by the top neuroscience, is to get control of the human mind and behavior. Well, what's the point of controlling it if you're not gonna
force it to do things?
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So we've played some of this AR type stuff before. I think it definitely plays into the whole fake alien invasion scenario, the asteroid scenario, because both of those really feed into the whole monkey man myth. And
spinning space
extinction
testicle,
level event, dinosaurs, it's happened before.
Right.
Type of, that's sort of also the ancient aliens mythos as well, is that not only did the dinosaurs get extinct by this tumbling rock through, you know, infinite space, but we also had aliens, you know, visiting from other planets or galaxies, solar systems, you know, at different parts of our crazily short, cosmologically speaking, you know, period of like known reported history. But yeah, this technology definitely, you know, it has advanced tremendously. Just think about like Toy Story in 1992 versus where they're at now, where they can do this three-dimensional, you know, projection midair with a drone.
Look at it this way: 9/11 again.
Right.
I believed, in spite of all my research for years, that plane that melted into a building was real. Imagine what they have now. I mean, that was probably, if not state of the art, that was high level then, whatever it was. Imagine what they have today.
Yeah, I mean, the drone program, we don't even really know how far back it goes, where they were doing unmanned aerial vehicles with different payloads and stuff. And this, you know, this all ties in with the cartographic censorship, to use Xavier's, you know, term. And also, I think, you know, cartographic censorship is, in a sense, Earth censorship, right? And
realm
the whole
censorship.
Space cosmology, in a way, is limiting us to this spherical model where, in point of fact, they have these technologies that literally these, you know, NASA's like the biggest purchaser of helium in the world. And they have balloon platforms that, like, just even in antiquity, there's this whole realm of research about like 1800s era, 1700s era photographs or depictions where airships have been censored out of the sky.
That's right.
And apparently there was a whole era where that was the way to travel.
Yes.
You know, and it's like, we know that airships were a thing. They weren't just like this little niche thing. It was like huge at one point.
Yeah.
And they were huge. And, you know, but we don't do that for some reason anymore. But NASA does. NASA has airships. They have balloon platforms with all sorts of surveillance technology. You know, literally Hubble is on an airplane.
Right.
It's not this orbiting, you know, piece of space junk. It's literally an airplane, and they open a door. Are you aware of this? You're nodding your head.
Yeah, I saw one of the videos. I first thought it was fake until I looked into it.
You know, it's like you put all these things together, and it's like, what are they setting this up for? Because we are locked off from so much.
So much.
You know, this whole Afghanistan, supposedly they got all of these drones and helicopters and stuff like that, and it's like, we paid for that.
That's right.
And you know,
it's so the whole Afghanistan thing is so fraudulent. Yeah. Trump, you might know, signed the deal to give power to Taliban. Yet Afghanistan historically is a graveyard of empires. That doesn't fit this time. The U.S. had 20 years. They had a legitimate army. They stood down. There was no fight.
Right.
Right.
It's all fraudulent. And as far as all that technology, there's no way they could use it unless they were taught how to use it.
Right. Well, it wasn't in 2018. Trump let go the current leader of the Taliban, if I'm not mistaken.
I can't recall, but I know he cut a deal.
That was part. I think it was part of the deal.
It was part of the deal, yeah. To give power back to the Taliban. Everything is staged. I mean, everything is theater. And again, this is pushing us towards more divide and conquer and distraction in the U.S. because they want people at each other's throats and okay, let's fight over Trump versus Biden and not care about the 15th shot.
Right, right. Well, and that's what they did last summer with the whole Summer of Rage. And racism is a pandemic too, right? So the 2021 version of this is the late summer. We're a failed occupying failed state, basically.
A lot's converging though. There's so many plans. Right. There's so many plans, like Dave said. As far as we're really getting overwhelmed, because all of everything post 9/11, the Patriot Act, the National Defense Authorization Act, detaining Americans without due process. Department of Homeland Security based on the Stasi. None of that went away. It's all coming back, and now they're saying the greatest threat is your white conservative man.
Which is an absolute statistical farce.
Of course, it doesn't exist.
Like
most of the white supremacists are feds, or I mean,
right?
It's
proven.
I mean, it's more rare than the flu. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Or flu deaths, for that matter.
Flu deaths, yeah.
Right.
But all this infrastructure's in place, so when they want to flip the switch, I mean, it could get real bad real fast.
Internet of Bodies, yeah.
Yeah, I posted this on the Zetetic News Sleuth Telegram. This is a screenshot from some presentation of the World Economic Forum. It says the Internet of Bodies is here. This is how it could change our lives. We're entering the era of the Internet of Bodies, collecting our physical data via a range of devices that can be implanted, swallowed, or worn. The result is a huge amount of health-related data that could improve human well-being around the world and prove crucial in fighting the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh my God.
You know, and I just wonder, in the context of our gestalt for this show, is the fake alien invasion going to happen before or after they have cybernetic implants with AR superimposed imagery over our eyeballs? That's what I want to know. Or is it really going to be something where families still sitting around a television set of some sort?
I would say that, again, it's all incrementalism.
Yes.
So each new phase that they're trying to usher in is accompanied by some sort of manufactured outside threat event. Now, the current beta test for all of this is currently being done right now with the whole war against the invisible enemy and war on disease, right? We had the war on terror in the first 20 years of the 21st century, and so for the next 20 years we're going to have war on disease. And
I think they're merging. The war on terror never ended.
Right,
they're merging.
Yeah,
I think as far as the implants, it's going to be both. I think not everyone will adopt them, but just look at COVIDs. Apart from what's in the actual shots, just the psychological terror of this aspect that people, to disorient the populace to the point that they're afraid, disoriented, don't know what's going on, that makes you more susceptible. So then, you see the mothership over to London. Okay, I'm in. Hey, and remember, part of science fiction, V for Visitor. It was on ABC, I think. And yeah, these were reptilians, incidentally. They were reptilians and they wanted to steal the water of the world. But they came to make friends and they had healing technologies. So what if these aliens just say, off the top of my head, theoretically, 5 years from now, aliens, the good aliens come that Greer's talking about, and they have healing centers.
Right.
Will the lady who's with gloves on in Trader Joe's, who's putting sanitizer over gloves, I think she's there first. I think she's going to step over people to get to that healing center first.
Right. Well, right, because the whole misanthropic cosmology is based on humans being the virus, the original virus.
It was in the Matrix. You are a virus.
Right.
Everywhere you go.
That's right. That's right. And we did.
Well, they're literally saying that pandemic of the unvaccinated. You know, that's
like pandemic of the retarded.
That is quoted. That is quoted in the city of Durham, North Carolina, indoor mask mandate. That is quoted. The pandemic.
That's beyond gay.
This catchphrase crap.
That's beyond gay.
It's just unbelievable.
They were reptilians.
Yeah, I'm playing in the background.
It's to a point where if you're not vaccinated, you're killing people.
Yeah, that's what Sean Penn basically said just the other day. Yesterday.
So murder is now a transmittable disease.
That's right.
They're equating actual murder with
just passing a symptom. Yeah, that's unbelievable. It is. I mean, if you look at the UN's definition of genocide, right? There's 10
Yeah.
there's 10 stages. We're well into stage 7 right now.
Yeah, for sure. Oh yeah, I mean, we're literally at everyone getting a yellow star and only being able to inhabit certain areas.
Right, and then I watch all these kind of lefty responses, and one of them is, only ignorant people compare non-suffering in the present to real suffering in the past. It's just a mockery of people's intelligence. Even old Noam Chomsky, right? Oh, there needs to be a convention that
I gotta play
isolate
this.
themselves. Okay.
I am sickened by Noam.
Oh, look at him. He's just an old miser at this point, getting $500,000 a year in tenure, doing nothing.
He needs the booster. He'll feel better.
Right.
Okay, we'll move on to question 33, the next one. Air on again. What are your thoughts on mandating vaccines?
Well, it's a mixed story. I think people who refuse to accept vaccines, I think the right response for them is not to force them to, but rather to insist that they be isolated. If people...
right there.
The myopia is unbelievable.
Not to force them to, but to insist that they be isolated. That's called jail. That's called jail.
It's like if you read
he thinks he's doing us a favor
about the quarantines, where it starts out with green zones and says it's kind of like in a community, and talking about FEMA camps, just like different levels where you get to the FEMA camp.
Well, right, yeah, isolation. Doesn't that harken to the whole shielding approach, quote unquote, of if we can't, forcibly do it, then we just have to forcibly remove them
for their own good.
For their own good. Oh wow!
Well, it's an exhibit of how the highest assumed intelligence doesn't know how evil works.
Right. That's a great point.
People do not know how evil works, even though we have
from the pit of hell.
Thousands of years of historical information.
The government has a right to jam it to your arm. Yeah, based upon Buck versus Bell, which said the state had a right to forcibly sterilize feeble people. Great legal precedent. Great legal precedent, Dershowitz. Great precedent.
Oh yeah, we played this clip where his eyes bulge out like a literal demon going back to, he looks literally possessed here.
And he says he's a libertarian.
Oh,
he's as libertarian as Joseph Stalin.
Yeah, exactly.
They're providing us from a medical standpoint is accurate. There are doctors who argue that Anthony Fauci is totally wrong in his assessment, and it certainly seems like week to week, month to month, they don't seem to know anything about this virus.
I agree with that. I think there's a lot. I wrote an article early on pointing out two fundamental errors right away. But that's what a democracy is about. And if the majority of the people agree and support that for public health measures, you have to be vaccinated, you have to be vaccinated. They should give you an alternative. The alternative is to live in your home, don't get vaccinated, but never, ever leave your home, live in a bubble. But if you want to interact with other people, you cannot become Typhoid Mary. The Constitution doesn't give you the right to spread your illness to other people. And you can disagree, you can be a dissenter, you can leave the country, you can go into a bubble. But what you can't do is say, I don't agree with Fauci, therefore I'm going to take the law into my own hands and decide to spread the disease. That's not a constitutional right. Sorry.
So it is a constitutional right to have a one-size-fits-all medical procedure that's imposed in order for people to interact in society. Where's the constitutional protection for that?
He literally brought it down to Fauci.
Right.
He was like, you can decide that you don't agree with Fauci, but,
the reasoning goes back to Buck versus Bell. That was a literal Oliver Wendell Holmes. They hold him up as a genius. He was a fascist. And he ruled that the state has a right to forcibly sterilize people that the state considered to be, what they say, feeble-minded.
Right.
This is the legal precedent. This is why none of these guys are all clowns. None of them go back to the original intent of the Constitution. He knows he's a liar. He's a liar. He knows the original intent of the Constitution would never, there's no one you could quote, Federalist or anti-Federalist, that would ever take a perverse view like that. This is based upon erroneous legal precedent of these horrible decisions. And Buck versus Bill is still in the books. So technically, he's right, even though it isn't constitutional, because they have this whole idea of case law. Yeah, there's case law.
Bullshit.
Yeah, there's case law.
Again, law is the second-rate philosophy enforced by third-rate people.
It's whatever they feel like they can successfully argue.
Yeah.
And present in court, and the judge is like.
You still have other end. You have jury nullification, and I remember they arrested some people. I don't know what state, just giving out pamphlets to jurors telling them that they judge the law, not just decide the verdict. And they arrested people for that. It was dangerous.
But it's the same kind of presumption.
That's right.
With Alan Dershowitz, as we heard with Noam Chomsky, about number one, the effectiveness of the vaccines, the surefire, like
the science is settled.
The conclusion.
The science is settled.
Listen to what he says next here about the unvaccinated and what they're committing.
Well, they also share a tribal affiliation as well, but go ahead and continue.
Oh, don't share any anti-Semitic propaganda with me.
Oh, what do you mean? They're part of Reader's Digest. That's the tribe.
Aside, I am willing to be a danger to the community by refusing a vaccine. They should then say, well, I also have the decency to isolate myself. Okay, I don't want a vaccine, but I don't have the right to run around harming people. That should be a convention.
So not getting the vaccine, quote unquote, even though there are multiple types, some of which have different levels of approval and different records on the market, not getting one is equivalent to
harm,
violence.
Right. What do you do with the vaccinated people when they prove the vaccinated people are infecting others? What do you do with them?
That's not the same kind of harm. That's different.
That's a good harm.
Yeah, that's the good harm.
That's the reptilian harm. That's
different.
That's good.
That's different. That's differentism.
That's differentism.
Hey, how about you prove that I'm actually infectious first? Why don't you isolate the virus?
Well, this is
and develop a
the
test.
fraud of all this pseudo forensics that they do.
Right, pseudo forensics is good. For it.
Everything from the PCR.
I'll just run a PCR test at 40 cycles. I'll get you positive.
Even 30. Even 30.
Yeah, and then you know what? I'm going to go isolate all your children.
Right.
I'm going to go isolate everybody that you're in contact with. I'm going to have warrants to all your digital data. And then I'm going to talk to everyone else. And I'm going to put them in re-education camps if you're lucky.
Yeah, they're called public schools.
Right. Well, and that's supposedly Mr. Champion of human rights from the Vietnam era. Fast forward 50 years. Look what he's advocating now.
It's what in the Bible, they miss the cornerstone. All their intelligence is based on a lie. It's missing the cornerstone, which is they don't understand how evil works.
Right.
So all this intellect and all these presumptions is it does not reference how evil manifests in the human dynamic.
Or maybe they're just getting paid off because Dershowitz, his public profile got a lot more rich.
Dershowitz is just trying to get a seat because he thinks he's going to gain power when they get their utopia of martial law and biomedical tracking, and he thinks he's just going to in the upper echelons that he's going to be immortal.
Right. He gets the pass in the world to come.
Well, I'll tell you this: he got a lot more popular after he started hanging out with Jeffrey Epstein.
Imagine that.
And now he's a Republican, and he's involved with the Trump campaign.
That's right. Yeah.
You know, just a little sidetrack. You know, talking about incantations and incarnations. You know, I being a witness of UFO spectacle myself, so which I consider very lucky. But I would think that these guys in the Crowleys, the Parsons, the L. Ron Hubbards, at this level, it's very powerful if an actual being manifested from you. I put a little clip on the Zetetic telegram with Molech appearing, just kind of show an example. I think that's what we're dealing with. I think that's the real magnetizing or driving energy, is that these people have actually come face to face with these demons and the power that they have. Yeah, exactly. And when somebody like a Dershowitz or someone powerful meets these beings, everything else pales in comparison. They have no problem killing or doing what is necessary, because that type of power is what everyone's really searching for. We're all searching for some divinity, and you have really two courses. You have a crossroads. You can go through God in the narrow path, or you can acquire it elsewhere. We have to go.
Destroy them. I will consume their lives. When could you do this? When I am complete. In 2 nights. If I can leave this place. Why couldn't you? Because an object of mine, the origin of my power, must be removed from the keep and hidden in these mountains and kept safe from people here. And from anyone who may come here. It must be done by someone I...
You know, when Alex Jones went off the rails on the Joe Rogan program, allegedly, he was talking about the military and the elite and these high-level people basically getting injected with DMT and interfacing with extra dimensions, getting
absolutely following the clockwork elves,
supernatural intelligence. I have experimented with DMT myself. It's
100%.
It's real. It's real.
Yeah. Everything is. We are literally trans-dimensional beings. We collaborate with all these multi-dimensions, and our powers that we can create in third-dimensional reality.
It's all right. It's all right there. It's all right there.
Yeah, it's all right there.
It's all.
And we have lost our way on how to try to channel the true God, and we have now been in league with these demons, and they're here.
I didn't experience elves. But seeing this video, whatever this is from, The Keep,
yeah.
I will say the beings that I saw, this silhouette I'm looking at with the sort of Cthulhu type, like dreads on the back, rings a bell, but that very powerful, can kind of see through you type being. It wasn't skeletal like it's depicted here, but these beings definitely I interfaced with, and I was shown a cube that would basically transmit huge amounts of information about whatever it was I wanted to know, and it was just this very surreal, fleeting experience. And this was way before I heard anything about Joe Rogan and Alex Jones talking about military folks actually using this chemical to interface with dimension to retrieve information and then manifest it in our physical world. So mine was more almost accidental. And what I about like this imagery right here is crazy. But what I'm relating is, I mean, I can't put it into human language, you know, the type of experience that it was. Visuals are just like, we're just trying to, sorry to interrupt, but it's just kind of like, we're trying to like imitate it in this, this imagery. There was a visual component to it, but the true like essence of the experience, it can't really be put into human language. It's almost like higher definition type of experience. But go on, Eric.
I was just saying there is so much commonality of people experiencing elves, especially in drug-induced psychosis and shadow people. It's completely known in the psychiatric world. I mean, if you have a DMT psychosis and you say you saw elves, most psychiatrists wouldn't bat an eye because they just think that's just a common response to a psychotic reaction. And especially the shadow world, especially with the meth-induced psychosis, these people go into these realms with shadow people. It creates paranoia. It creates violence and rage. And when they come back into the three-dimensional world, they still have a piece of it with them that carries with them like an echo or some type of residue. So I would suggest please don't wear pentagrams and do not try to incantate evil because you're literally opening doors to your own destruction. It's quite amazing. But again, this type of stuff we're talking about should probably be taught in first grade.
Yeah, I've heard stories, even something that appears as innocent as a Ouija board, especially with children, that would start to open up the door.
Hence why children are psychically driven horror movies and death. And I mean, all that is done on purpose. Repetition of death and horror and evil and
wearing masks and not talking to other people.
And not only will the part with children and being psychically driven with entertainment, it's to plant wiring in their unconscious that will drive their conscious mind for the rest of their lives, because we don't teach how we wire our unconscious, which drives our conscious mind. It's evil. At the end of the day, it's just pure evil, which most of us are unknown to.
And we like to think of ourselves as sophisticated for not believing in it and thinking that it's just a superstition. And as a result, we end up committing it on a collective and individual mass scale unwittingly while thinking we're doing good. And
exactly. Total inversion.
Total inversionism. And that's the indication where, I've always argued that we lost the three major fields of real scientific knowledge about this realm, and that is phenomenology, ponerology, which is the study of evil, and then pneumatology, which is the silent P, of pneumatic, which is spirit. So it's the pneumatology, phenomenology, and ponerology are all really the biggest cornerstones of real knowledge and science, and they're nowhere to be really found. Only
100%
slight lip service to phenomenology, and that's it. Is all we have.
Most of it is today. All that. Since we're unconsciously seeking that knowledge, they give it to us through entertainment and fantasy.
Right. It's a counterfeit, diluted, abominationist version that they hold up as the pinnacle or the best manifestation we could possibly imagine. And therein lies the snare and the whole reduction and seduction of the mind. And really, that's what the aliens are, is just beings who feed off of those reductions and seductions within the mind.
Absolutely. Creating an alter reality from our natural reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%. It is absolutely imperative for an individual. It takes great courage to break from the collective. That's what if anyone's seeking freedom, you have to be able to break from the collective.
Right.
If you don't know what that means, you have to start thinking for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the people who go down this journey and think for themselves eventually break the collective and can break on through, so to speak. But then to sustain their life in a healthy manner is difficult in itself. So, but that's the key for internal life.
Yeah, I'm concerned that we've taken liberties taken such a step back that it will be much more than my lifetime unless I'm able to achieve that eternal life here and now. Before we even achieve 50% of what I would like to achieve, because even before I was having to contend with my 3-year-old wearing a mask at gymnastics class, I was complaining about, like the passport system, as we talked about before, that travel's license, therefore inherently limited. Like clearly, 99% of the explorable Earth is not available to me.
Right.
Not just from a monetary perspective, but from, it's like Alex Jones, I'm going to spend $1 million to go find the edge of the Earth. And it's like, you won't get past the military.
Right.
You won't get past the military. So that's a joke. It's a non-starter type of conversation, but, that doesn't mean we don't fight for it.
Well, and I think through the vehicles by which, so-called aliens can infiltrate us, we can actually know higher worlds by which we can transcend them, or i.e. the demonic influence, by seeing them as basically obstacles or like necessary beings that provide us a lesson for how to move beyond the limitations of our thinking. So you can So you can actually
like an addiction or a bad habit, right? Like,
right.
It will ruin your life if you allow it to,
Mm-hmm.
or you can actually deal with it and ascend past it.
It's transmutation.
Yeah.
It's turning into the phoenix. Not only are the demons are they there? It's an opportunity. It's the challenge of self-awareness to use them to springboard into this eternal life.
Right.
So in a way, you're not a victim. It's an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the exciting thing about the.
Yes, we're all in it.
Right.
Yeah.
You guys are all in the game.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, on the bright side, that's one of the big positives of this show is getting together, having an opportunity to get together with you guys and talk about everything that's going on and everything that's transpired. It's definitely, like I said, an epic moment in history, and everything does seem to be culminating into some sort of great confrontation, to allude to an earlier discussion, and some sort of climax, but it's more like an archipelago of multiple
right
climaxes.
It's a rapture. You guys are already in the rapture.
Yeah, because if you look at the etymology of rapture, it's similar actually to rupture, right? Which is
Right.
just it's a epistemological divergence of what has been before. So technically, you could make the case that every single reset or every single civilizational cycle is preceded by some sort of rapture or rupture in the fabric of normalcy or what's deemed conventional. So I think we're right in the middle of that really right now on a lot of levels. And I think that the invisible enemy paradigm is really a lifting of the veil, and in that sense it is apocalyptic because it shows the entire machinery of deceit that's always been used. It's always using the limited frequency by which we can interact with reality as the very weakness that enslaves us, right? So the solution to that would be to just further enter into the senses that digest reality and create a super sensibility within that reality. And that's how you can begin to sort of attain a sort of bird's eye view, if you will, to use a common parlance for this kind of issue. So the bird's eye view of, the alien disclosure is really that we're being tested as conscious beings.
100%.
On some kind of fundamental awareness level. And that's probably always existed. Probably every single generation has come across some kind of similar grappling, some sort of similar reckoning. It's just this one seems to be so much more epic, or a sort of hero archetype as opposed to a prophet archetype or a servant archetype or what have you. It's like we're almost in a sort of heroic awakening, you might say. But the flip side of that is there's also a mass zombification, right? For every massive heroic awakening, there's a huge zombification slumber that happens simultaneously. And that seems to be the gestalt of our age, is like, you either embrace the courage to depart from the collective, or you take the blue pill and you accept the normalization and the demoralization as just, part and parcel of what it means to be a evolving monkey man on the spinning orb.
Enforcing mask wearing,
Right.
even when it doesn't even comply with the government orders. Going above and beyond, double masking, triple masking,
Making sure you get your 758th booster in the year 2076. I mean, it's unbelievable.
The Biden administration, I don't know if we touched on this before, has banned all Russian ammo and guns, and that's going to drop the price of brass because of the Russian stuff is cheaper, it's steel cased. So now ammo is going to go through the roof, and there'll be less of it. That'll create a shortage. I think by the end of the year it's going to be bad because there will be a real health crisis. I disagree with Sherry Tenpenny. I don't think everyone who got the jab, and I also don't think they gave everyone the jab.
Right.
Oh, you look at the numbers. I posted that on the Zetetic News Network channel. 1 second per shot, you'd have still under 1 billion shots. They haven't produced all of them. Plus, they got caught. It came out in WRAL, of all places. Walgreens called a lady telling her that she had gotten a saline shot.
Saline.
That wasn't an accident. It was an
Right.
accident that they said it.
They're doing that on purpose, I think, to sort of titrate the dosage.
Absolutely.
And incrementally,
But
for as plausible deniability for the deaths that will invariably happen.
Right. They want it. They're technocrats. Remember that. They want to do it in a very systematic, organized fashion.
But
That's why they
also
want to do it.
discreet. They want it to be discreet.
Right. It would it would be too obvious.
Too
right?
obvious.
If everyone had the same symptoms at the same
Right.
time. But think about by the end of the year, we're going to have the perfect storm. We're going to have a real health crisis because the people, the providers, the doctors and nurses that took the jab, a good percentage of them that didn't get saline, are going to be ill. Some will die. And then you have people like a nurse I met this week that told me point blank.
There have been a lot of walkouts.
Right. She said in a month, if she has to take the jab, she's quitting.
Yeah.
So they're creating, just like with the food, they're going to create a shortage in healthcare.
Yep.
So the people that had nothing to do with the psyop, say you're diabetic, or you need heart surgery. It's not going to happen.
Right.
And that's also part of the depopulation schema.
Of course.
Is to accelerate natural death, right?
And it also serves to demoralize again and debase us to keep society
after you've
in a
lost
state
your
of
mom
crisis.
and your sister, you know, you just give up. Yeah. These are all really good topics people should be aware of.
And in a way, it's the alien aspect really plays into the invisible enemy that is, the cerveza bug.
Well, think about it. If they do show up, I'm not saying it's going to happen next month, but if we go with the mothership scenario and these beings come out and all of a sudden, they're officially agreed by the government, they say, you know what? We got cures for everything.
Right.
People are going to be on board.
Look, the Democrats and the liberals, libtards, are already taking the experimental Trump injection. Something they would have never admitted to doing, just a few months before. So I agree with you. I mean, there's so many different ways they could engineer the consent, for going aboard or taking taking the implant.
That would be big, though. I mean, if we had these beings show up and people believe in the Star Wars and outer space, it's like, wow, they
could literally, it could be CGI.
It could be, of
and
course.
Then they would just go to the Walgreens and get the chip.
Of course, but think about it. As far as
it's that fucking simple.
As far as marketing, if people believe the aliens are real, they're going to say, "Look, these guys are geniuses. They came here from 500 million miles away. Of course, they could cure cancer. I trust them. Give it to me.
It's
whatever
the
they got."
Same reason they trust Bill Gates.
Same reason.
It's the same reason he runs Microsoft.
I trust the experts. You're against science because I trust the experts.
Yes.
It's true. It's idiocracy, but I have to admit it's true.
The alien cartoons have greater scientific knowledge than anyone here combined. So
take me to your leader.
Take me to your leader.
Joe Biden.
Yeah, I took my daughter to a dance class, and they sent a notice out about the mask mandate, and I of course told them about the medical condition, cleared that before I even went in there, and they were cool with it. But there was a guy there, double mask, and he was wearing a cartoon depiction of the solar system T-shirt, and I was like,
it's like a
of
meme.
Course.
It's a walking meme.
Of course,
it's absolutely related.
And some people probably hate on me for criticizing the guy for wearing a mask at his place of employment. Oh, he has to, and it's like, well, no, he doesn't. He doesn't.
Technically doesn't.
He could say no. He could
right.
Be
everyone can just
and that's what it needs to come down to.
Everyone needs to start saying.
I was ashamed that we even put our daughter in a mask, and I admit that was a mistake, and I should have confronted the gym earlier because I knew it was a fraud earlier. But it's like make my wife cry because we are losing the only gymnastics class that we had, that whole deal, and it's like that's at a very low cost. It's a sort of an allegory for what society's going through. Everybody's losing something normal, something human, wholesome that was customary before.
That wouldn't be a second thought.
Right.
Here's an interesting argument for people still in the Matrix. If the vaccine is good, why doesn't the CDC mandate it? Why doesn't Johnson & Johnson, which owns Janssen, which makes the shot, mandate it? Why doesn't Pfizer mandate it? Why doesn't Moderna mandate it?
Because they want the plausible deniability and the liability to be basically a rabbit hole.
Of course, we know that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean,
to someone in the Matrix, like, okay, if you're telling me you're in Joe Company and you're a good employee and you're gonna buckle under, it's like, hey, if this thing is so good, why does the manufacturers say you have to take it?
Right.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, another question I would posit is, what's the price that you put on your health? Like, what are the things that you take for granted?
I can't tell you how many people have told me, well, I know, these are people who previously expressed at least some reservation about it, and I bring it up to them, did you see our company put in a vaccine mandate for travel, even for meeting internally? And they're like, really? And I was like, yeah, you didn't see the email? He's like, oh, I never read that shit. I got vaccinated anyway, so I figured they were going to do this. So, that's really why I got it, because I need to travel. And I'm like, that is the worst reason to do it.
Here's another great stat. I didn't realize this. I knew President Ford mandated the whole country to take a swine flu shot because one soldier died at Fort Dixon, New Jersey. I knew they stopped that program because a number of people died and over 500 got Guillain-Barré nerve disease. What I didn't know is that the number of deaths then in 1976, I believe, was 32, and they stopped it dead cold. Now, based upon VAERS, which we all know is underreported, it's over 11,000 deaths, and they haven't stopped it.
Right, and again, that's underreported.
I told my PCP doctor that. Bounced right off him.
Bounced right off. In 1 ear, out the other.
You don't need to leave that doctor.
Yeah, it's a mutual divorce.
Yeah.
This whole thing of like your medical records being now everybody's business is interesting because
unbelievable.
Because like when I make a medical exception, and I see the difference in the Orange County language versus the Durham language. To your point off the air, the incrementalism of the language. They're soft in some areas, they're harder in others. I can see how they're tightening down because Durham's is very loose. I mean, it very strongly encourages it. It definitely makes you like morally wrong in the language to not wear a mask, but at the same time it provides all these exceptions that are, if you're reading it literally, I mean, you if you just don't want to, you could just not wear it, and that's your exception. But in Orange County, for example, they are much stricter, and they say, for example, you have to have, rather than a medical condition or behavioral condition, a diagnosed medical condition or behavioral condition.
But
it's like,
so
there you're setting up.
But do you need proof yet? Like Connecticut last year said you had to carry around a letter.
So later in the language it says, if you see someone not wearing a mask, you should assume they're not wearing a mask for valid reason. In the Durham language, it says if someone says they have a medical exception, they should not be asked for papers. So I see that, and I'm like, okay, that's good, right, so far, but it's setting the stage. It's like preconditioning, it's softening, it's sort of it's priming the pump, so to speak, for that moment. And it's kind of like you saw that across the board with all these companies who say, we're pulling back on our mask policy for those who are fully vaccinated. And it's like, oh, there's an interesting caveat there. So are you going to ask for our vaccination No, we're not yet, because we don't have a uniform system yet to do it. And it's just like, come on, I see this. It's so obvious, like what they're positioning themselves for. And it's like, we knew that, when people were like, I can't wait to get back to normal when the vaccine comes out. It's like, where are you now? Where are you now?
Well, it's other people's fault. That's
the pandemic of the unvaccinated.
That's where they are now. Yeah. And I've never gotten a straight response from any jab supporter as to why they should be so afraid if their procedure is so effective of other people who don't get the same it's like, can you think your way out of that group think? Because I don't think you can.
They're addicted to collectivism.
Right.
The official.
They're not actually thinking. They're using the collective to think for them.
Right.
The official non-scientific answer is that, and they said this from day one, the jab doesn't prevent you from getting COVID. You'll just get it less severe. So they would say, well, you're still placing me at a risk because I could get it and I don't want to get it, even though it would be less severe.
Okay, well, it's like
it says right here in the Durham language. It says, while it is possible for vaccinated persons to become infected and pass the virus to others, the vast majority of infected persons in the most severe cases of the illness are those who have not been vaccinated.
Show me the proof.
North Carolina HHS Secretary Mandy Cohen has described this current increase in cases as a, quote, pandemic of the unvaccinated. That's in the language. The
That's
declaration.
So gay.
It's
That's so gay.
unbelievable.
Outrageous.
That's cosmic gay.
Yeah. Intergalactic. Well, we got to wrap this episode up. It's been awesome having Xavier and James in studio. EricB, thank you for joining all the way in the West Coast.
If I just can make one prediction.
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So the UFOs will present themselves when the climate or the earthquakes and the hurricanes become so overwhelming. That's when they're going to come.
Saviors. They'll save us.
Yep.
They'll save
Absolutely.
the earth.
At our most desperate moment.
And the actual climate change is due to the Lord returning. That's what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
His presence coming back into this sphere is causing the physical disruption because we haven't taken care of his law.
You don't mean
So he's
sphere
coming back.
literally, do you?
Well.
Do I mean that way?
You don't mean sphere literally, do you?
Yeah, right.
Sphere.
Thank you.
In the sphere.
Could be sphere.
Right.
Well, that is going to be
In the
that is going to be the explanation. Is when there is the grand reveal. It's we got saved in the nick of time by our big brother aliens.
Yeah.
Right.
And they'll follow the World Health Organization, United Nations.
We're working with your leaders.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Perfectly.
I mean, it's amazing.
And
People already trust
the whole
them.
The whole Star Trek thing of non-intervention. It's all laid. The groundwork's all laid down there for you to believe it.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you, EricB. Thank you, Xavier. Thank you, James. Check us out, Zetetic.news. Check us out on Twitter, Zetetic News Network, Theta TV, Zetetic News Network 10, and YouTube, Zetetic News Network and Zetetic News Clips. Also, check out our Telegram. You can find the button on our website. And, yeah, thanks again, everybody. Send me your Theta addresses. I'll hook you up with some T-Fuel for joining me on the show. And until next time.
Yes, sir.
Godspeed.
Godspeed, my man.
Godspeed.